Way. We are being recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia. So, if anybody else is recording, just let us know. With that, let's jump right into it. We have a continued public hearing. The first one is on 21 through 29 Drum Hill Road. This is a project up in Drum Hill, and the proponent is here.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is Attorney Melissa Robbins. I'm here tonight for Chelmsford Retail Management, LLC. As you know, at the last meeting, we did have a draft decision, but we had some concerns raised by the abutter along Drum Hill Road, so we continued the meeting so that we could work through some of the details that she was having issues with. I do have Katie Enright with me tonight from Howard Stein Hudson, so I'll allow her to go through some of the changes we've agreed to on this project plan.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson. We had continued the last meeting kind of at the last minute prior to the planning board decision because we had heard from Phyllis Gervais, the abutter, to the west of this project and with the strip mall with Chipotle and a bank and the pet store, et cetera, and the car part store. And her concern, we had been talking to her throughout, but her concern was mainly those cross connections and some of the information or some of the questions that the planning board had asked at the previous meeting related to cross traffic that might go through her property. So she had since hired Brian Melissi from Whitman and Bingham to do an engineering review of the project and consult with her. And we've had a couple back and forths with Mr. Melissi, who's here tonight, regarding what her concerns are and making sure that we address all of her concerns. Mainly what it came down to were those cross connections. And even though she has the ability on her property to close those cross connections because each of the properties is private property, originally we had started, it seemed appropriate for them to be open. Prior to the last meeting, she was adamant that they needed to be closed. So we had immediately done a plan change the day of the meeting. But she wanted some more time to meet with Mr. Melissi and more time to consult with her children and some of her tenants prior to us moving forward with the plan. So we had offered to continue at that last meeting. So we've been away now for quite a while. What the plan changes show is that those two cross connections are closed. And we're extending the landscaping through those two cross connections. We did leave the cross connections provide a little bit of drainage relief to each of the properties, and so without putting in a full sloped granite curb, which would then prevent that from happening, we've essentially created a sloped granite curb shoulder the whole way except for two 6-foot sections, which would allow the crossing of drainage in the northernmost cross connection and the southernmost cross connection. So it'll provide a visual buffer, but it won't provide a topographical impediment for 6 feet. So a car would still, you could get through there if you absolutely wanted to, but there will be landscaping in the way. There will be a landscape island, and there will be a sloped granite curb for the majority of those cross connections. We also had taken care of the majority of the comments from the engineering staff and planning comments also, and comments regarding the fire access. So since the last time we were here before you, we've added a foot to each of those bypass lanes on either side of the building. So we've reduced the landscape area by a foot so that we can still have a landscape area. It doesn't negate the whole landscape area, but we opened that lane up to an 11-foot lane and a 10-foot lane, so there's 21 feet on both sides of the building. We've showed sloped granite curb on the side on the exterior, so it could be mountable. And we've also reduced all 3 islands that are around the project, so to add some added room to those fire turning plans. And we've submitted it to the full board, so it's here. This is the fire truck that was provided and put into our auto turn program. We showed it both ways, but essentially with the changes that we've made to the plan, we've reduced the parking to the south to allow the radius to be opened further. We've reduced the island at the corner, and we've reduced the 2 rear islands so that there's no interaction with those islands. There's basically a striped area to keep people in their lanes. And we come around the building and get back out. So we're actually going in the proper direction now also, which we weren't in the previous iteration. And that's because we took a parking space out of that lower area. We also added the additional handicap space, and we've moved the hydrant back away from the corner of that island after meeting with both Chief Ryan and Dan Kostafis from the Fire Prevention Office. we made that additional adjustment also. There's also minor changes to things like drainage and utilities that we went through with your town engineer. And I believe that's basically it. I know we have a draft decision that we've had a
Waiting on
chance-
Colleen to bring the.
Right, okay.
bring
those up.
versions
So certainly, I know we've had a month since we've been here last. We've done some work kind of behind the scenes. And we hope we've satisfied all of your concerns.
Great. Thank you. Let's see, we do have a revised letter from the Fire Prevention Office, and we should probably give that a read.
Dear members of the board, this office has reviewed the changes submitted to this department by Howard Stein Hudson Engineers as of Friday, March 22nd, 2019, and finds the following. Water supply and the hydrant locations are adequate. The proponent moved the fire hydrant on the property as requested by Fire Prevention Office into an area that is more protected and less susceptible to vehicle impact. Current flow and pressure data shall be submitted to this office prior to construction for approval. Fire apparatus access is adequate. The applicant reduced the size of the 3 islands from the originally submitted plan, which greatly improved the fire apparatus access. The closure of the cross connections with an adjacent property does not appear to impede fire department access to this proposed building. The applicant is advised to contact this office early in the pre-construction process to coordinate the installation of all required fire protection and life safety systems in accordance with Chelmsford Fire Department local regulations. This office would approve of this proposal as submitted, and I ask the board to make this letter part of their approval process. Respectfully, Daniel Katsufis.
Thank you. Now, we'll take a round of questioning from the board, and then we'll open it up. This is a public hearing, so anybody who wants to speak will certainly have a chance. Any comments? Don? Pretty straightforward to me.
I get, could you bring back up the fire access template? So if you got both fire trucks exiting and entering and exiting from the, I guess it would be the eastbound side of Drum Hill Road, would you still make that template if the truck coming from Lowell
Yes.
was actually in the right lane?
Yes, and we provided both of those. Well, there's a center lane that allows for turning in either direction. We provided that fire apparatus also to the fire department. This was the preferred route, or this was the route that the fire chief said that they would take. So this was the one formally submitted, but we showed it both ways in our drawings.
Okay, do we have that drawing here?
That's it right there.
Not from the other direction, we don't. The fire department does.
It would have been nice if we could see it. All right, enough on that. The other question on the drainage, the water coming off your property is gonna be running into a catch basin onto the neighbor's property, is that correct?
There's a very small bit of water that goes that way now. And then that pipe actually crosses our property.
Okay, has that been addressed with the neighbor and
Yes.
resolved?
Yes. There's a bit of her drainage that comes on our property also.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, that's the only question I have. I'm still not in favor of that drive-through.
Bike rack?
Yes, where did we put it? It's right here.
Good. Got it. Anything else, Henry?
No,
Tim?
no, I have no questions at this time.
Mike?
Christina, one quick question for you. The entranceway distance is 20, they have 20 feet entrance. Is that proper for this size of facility on the road cut?
Yes,
It is fine?
yes.
And then, Katie, for yourself, you get that plan out right now, the fire department truck, how does that look when you have, the parking lot is full?
It doesn't interact with any of the cars.
It doesn't?
It doesn't. No, none of the overhangs nor wheels pass through any of the parking spaces.
And if there's cars in the drive-through line, will the fire truck be able to access the property?
Yes.
That's it, Mike.
Okay, Nancy?
No questions.
Hank?
No questions.
Okay, well, I have no questions either. This being a public hearing, would anybody from the public like to offer comments? All right, seeing nobody, I guess I'm prepared to accept a motion.
Motion to close public meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just before
Yep.
you close, I did have one question about the draft decision. If we
Oh,
could
sure.
Take some input on it just before you close.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I spoke up at school. Just on the second, there's a condition, there was only one. Special condition number 2. It says, in lieu of conducting a full traffic study and implementing the traffic mitigation measures, a contribution in the amount of blank shall be made to the Drum Hill 53G mitigation fund. We actually did do a full traffic study. So I
Okay.
think the condition should be deleted.
How many parking spots are you adding?
Oh, we did, don't worry, the 53G for
Yeah.
the parking spots is there. It's the 53G for the, if you don't do the traffic study, that condition was, should not be in there. But the
Okay.
53G for the parking is absolutely in there. It's 364 spots, I think, or what is it,
No, it's
total spots? I'm thinking 104.
it's the difference between 36
Yeah,
and
it's a di- it's a
47.
difference.
Oh, 10 new parking
So
spaces, so it's
it's a-
$1,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
good
That's,
enough.
that's special condition 1. It's special condition
Okay.
2 that needs to be
Do
eliminated.
we have the traffic study in the folder?
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Okay, can you make that, mark that change in?
That was my only revision.
Got it. Okay, we'll take care of that. One more shot. Anybody from the public like to speak? All right, then I will entertain the motion.
Motion to close the public meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, second from Tim. In favor? Aye. Okay. Deliberation point here. Let's see. This came in under a COID, so we only have, we really only have one motion to it. Do people want to take a couple of minutes and just go through this?
Yeah, I mean, since we just got it, I just wanted to.
Okay, then let's take a couple of minutes and review.
Kevin, in the future, could you put page numbers on these things?
Yeah. Okay. Folks ready? Anybody want more time?
I've got a question. When you get ready for it.
Okay,
You good?
all right. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, under special conditions, number 9. As agreed by the applicant, no Dunkin' Donuts franchise. Is it legitimate to specifically restrict
Just thinking the same
a
thing.
specific
Yeah.
company?
We normally wouldn't do that. but
Yeah, that's
where
what I'm worried
Where the
about.
applicant put that on the table, and they're amenable to that condition, that's why it's there.
Okay.
I'm
So they put it on the
I'm
table.
still concerned about it.
No need for any concern. Again, this is something that the applicant submitted as part of their oral testimony. They were the one who put that on the table without the board pursuing it. I think that's likely why the board did not spend a lot of time doing the review of the traffic
Yeah.
study.
Okay.
It seems that it would be more appropriate, both from the standpoint of potential liability to the Dunkin' Donuts franchise, and for the control of other franchises that could potentially go in there that were not Dunkin' Donuts, to have a restriction that no franchise with an estimated traffic level exceeding something such and such would be permitted.
I don't disagree with you, but the board did not, there's nothing in the public record that indicates the board even talked about the traffic study in any detail. The reason for that is because the board.
Because they
the
said
board-
they wouldn't do.
As soon as they said it wasn't gonna
Yeah,
be a
then it was
Dunkin'
not
Donuts,
an issue.
the board assumed that the worst-case scenario doesn't exist.
All right, well, I think that's something we should take forward as a lesson learned.
I
Okay.
agree with that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you too. I think.
Yeah, I see. Right.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts or comments?
Number 11 under decisions. Do we need to further define outdoor seating? What constitutes outdoor seating? Or is just outdoor seating is?
I think outdoor seating kind of covers it. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what you would put out there that would be outdoor seating in any real sense that would cause any confusion or problems with this.
Specifics with that will be
It'll show
determined by
any.
the building inspector
Yeah.
or the code. They have to be safe within a close
Yeah.
proximity to a parking area.
Shouldn't that be on the drawings?
Well, it may not happen.
Okay, because, I mean, it's not on the drawings.
So as you may recall, the applicants indicated that this drive-through may not be a restaurant at all.
Yeah.
It's not a restaurant, there's no need for any
Yeah,
outdoor seating.
I would agree. This is an issue for the building inspector to deal with.
My expectation is that it wouldn't be any more than 2 spaces, an area
Yeah.
20 by 20.
Yeah, what can you fit?
Yeah, it'd be seasonal,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Anybody else? I could be convinced to take a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the certified decision for 21/29 Drum Hill Road, CIOD overlay project, planning board file 2019-1.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Final comments? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-1.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is 152 Turnpike Road. Again, this is a continuing public hearing. And I believe there have been some modifications and adjustments to it, so the proponents would tell us what's new.
Sure. I'll let my Colleen, my technology wizard here, just get the presentation up. Just had to switch computers. There we are. Actually, we can look at the board for the first one, I think, even if you want to scroll up a little bit, so you can see the bottom of that, no, I mean, go down to the next slide, excuse me. Next slide. Roll up. Yes, okay. So this is the colored rendering of that plan, so I'll go through it quickly. Again, for the record, my name is Attorney Melissa Robbins. I'm from the law firm of DeShane and Farrell. Also with me tonight are the developers, John Norton Sr., John Norton Jr., as well as Mark Sullivan, and my engineer, Matt Hammer. We were at this board a month ago, and we got a lot of comments, mostly from the abutters and some from the board, and we have made some revisions as a reflection of those comments. I'll go through a couple of the highlight ones, and then I'll let my engineer talk about the more technical ones. We have added a 6-foot stockade fence along the rear of the property along the Stonegate development, so along the entire rear lot line. We've added a split rail fence along 154 Turnpike Road, which is on this side. After discussion with this abutter about how they'd like us to separate the properties, because they'd indicated that other people had gone onto their property and had dumped materials, and we wanted some demarcation so that didn't happen along this property line as well. So what we've agreed to do is put in a split rail fence and also plant some rhododendrons along that property line as well, so it'll look nice for both of us. We've added the actual construction of the sidewalk. I know at the last meeting we had said that we were going to give the town an easement and then that could be constructed later. But what we think we're going to do is actually try to construct the sidewalk. We've had discussions with your town engineer, and we think with a little on our property, but most of it on the town-owned property, we actually can construct that sidewalk. But we did, in the alternative, of course, if we can't construct it for some reason within the town right-of-way, we would agree to pay the fee towards the frontage and the calculation that's customary towards the planning board. And if we don't construct it, what we're going to do is reconstruct that stone wall, the existing stone wall along the property. And if we construct it, the stone wall will be removed, which is similar to what I told the board at the last meeting. We have changed the parking around a little bit, so it does look still like there's parking in the rear towards that Stonegate property, but actually we've removed those 2 spots and moved them up towards the front of the property. This was to address the concerns of the parking along the rear of the property line and also lights going into the rear of the property line, and just really to move that parking away. What we've agreed to do is put the 2 parking spots up front and then leave those 2 spots in the rear as land-based parking so that we could construct them later. The planning board's rule, I think, or the general bylaw says that if we have an issue within a year of the final occupancy for this project, the building inspector can inform the planning board there's an issue, and the planning board can enforce that and require the construction of those 2 parking spaces. We've also shown parking spaces throughout the entire development in the form of grass blocks, but I'm going to let my engineer speak a little bit more about the technical grass block components.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering, and you have to excuse my throat. Fighting off a terrible cold. So if you excuse me if I'm not clear on anything, I'll just repeat what if I need to. So as Attorney Robbins has indicated, we know that there was some concerns about having common parking at the rear of the entrance drive. And we have moved that parking to the left of the entrance in order to alleviate any confusion with common people using those two spaces in the rear. So through the comment from the town engineer in terms of providing some land bank spaces, we've incorporated 6 land bank spaces in areas where there will already be a green area there. So the nice thing about this True Grid product, it's essentially a plastic honeycomb grid that sits on top of processed gravel, and you can then incorporate loam into the honeycomb material, and you can drive on it, and it can handle an H20 loading vehicle. And that way we can just incorporate those with cutting out of the existing landscape grassed area and incorporate these True Grid parking spaces. And then in some of the areas, we might have to do some small decorative retaining wall work in order to hold back the soils so that the parking spaces are level. But the nice thing about having those two at the rear is they'll be utilized by each of the rear units. So I know there was a question with the abutters about navigating your way out of those rear spaces, and that'll be better suited with each of the two property owners at the rear to be able to jockey around their own vehicles if need be in order to get in and out of those two land bank spaces. So additionally, we have revised the drainage. We've been working with the town engineer in order to address all Ms. Papadopoulos's comments. And we've, like Ms. Robbins had indicated, we're gonna show new sidewalks in front of the project. We're gonna put in a solid fencing on the rear. That'll help with any lighting projection into the abutting properties. And then if they're detracted by the look of the project, there'll be a fence there to maintain some privacy for their backyards. And we're also putting a stockade fence up along the side of the lot line here. Excuse me, a split rail fence, thank you. Overall, we think it's a better project. It addresses the concerns of what we felt was coming out of the last planning board meeting. And I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Anybody on the board?
Mr. Chair, if the board has any technical questions, I would like to give the board a little bit more information.
Okay, please do.
I don't think Mr. Hammer had mentioned as well that there's also a small bench area, and there'll be a trail running over there to the sidewalk area with a bench and a sitting area as well towards the front of the property. Mr. Chair, what I would like to go into a little bit is I think the board wanted me to try to address some of the concerns of the abutters. I think there were a lot of abutters at the last meeting. They raised a lot of concerns. A lot of them were as to density, to noise, and to setbacks. And I want to let you know we've spent a lot of time over the last month, and we were grateful to have a lot of time because we've put a lot of information together regarding the density in the area. So if the board would just stick with me, I think we can run through this pretty quickly. Colleen, will you go to the next slide? So just a quick, this is the site as it exists today at 152 Turnpike. I think it's been raised a lot that this is an undersized lot in the RM zoning district, and you are all correct. We are not an 80,000 square foot lot. We were rezoned to RM, so we are actually pre-existing non-conforming. But we do get all of the benefits of the RM, and because we're in the BAOD overlay, we also get all of the benefits of the BAOD and the CEIOD. You don't have to take my word for it. We did write an opinion letter in August for which your town council responded to and has said that we have the rights and benefits of the underlying zoning district as well as the BAOD and the CEIOD. So that's generally the site view at 152 Turnpike. What you can see in the rear is the first edge of Stonegate, but we'll go through that in a little bit more depth in the later slides. Will you go to the next one, Colleen? So I think at the last meeting I had showed this bird's eye view, which I think is helpful to look at the overall area. We are located in the front area that says multifamily. We're surrounded by a few other multifamily uses. There's one lot that's undeveloped. We have another lot that already has a development. And then to our rear, we have Stonegate. And then across the street, they are not multifamily developments. That's actually zoned regular residential. So you don't see multifamily uses over there. What I don't think I gave the board at the last meeting is something other than a bird's eye view. So what does the impacts? If I'm gonna put something multifamily in the back, is that gonna have an impact to my neighbors? So what we did is we actually went around, and you can see those orange dots on that plan. We actually went around to all of those dots to see what our butters were dealing with today as to budding uses. And so if you go to the next one, Colleen. The first one is Waddington Distribution, so that would have been one of the rear dots you could see. We have a few views of this, but this is a 300,000 square foot distribution warehouse. There's about 30 tractor trailer loading docks. There's about 280 parking spaces. There's a large water tower, which you can see in the next site. This directs to the rear of the Stonegate community. If you look up, we actually have a couple pictures. Sorry, Colleen, I should tell you next slide, not go up. So if you see that red writing that says Stonegate right there, that's actually the rear of the Stonegate property to the back. And they abut to the water tower in the back of the the Waddington Distribution building. And I think there's actually one more if you go up, Colleen. So yeah, you can actually see that's a little bit more of a closer perspective. So you can see the water tower and the proximity to the Stonegate development. And as we go around the other side, there is actually another industrial use. It's a mixed use. It's an industrial daycare, commercial use, but I think the daycare might have actually be the bigger use out there. They have a very large playground in the rear. And that is actually the side of the building. And what you can see over to the right-hand side, and again, I apologize, the red writing is a little hard to see on these slides, but that's actually the abutting Stonegate property. The other multifamily development is actually Orchard Woods. And this is interesting because this is the closest perspective to Orchard Woods to Stonegate, and you can see that's the building that's closest is Orchard Woods, and where the red writing is Stonegate. And you can actually see where that snow pile is actually 2 visitor parking spaces to the rear of the property line, but there is no screening, and there's a tree line there to the rear. Since this was the only multifamily example that actually abuts Stonegate right now, I wanted to dive into it a little bit more to see what impact that development has to Stonegate. So I did actually do an analysis, and if you go to the next slide, I looked at what does 32,000 square feet of this property, Orchard Woods. If I put that gray block you see over, is it Orchard Woods? I'm sorry. Yeah, Orchard Woods. If you put 32,000 square feet around Orchard Woods, so the closest proximity to Stonegate, you have 9 townhouse-style units in that 32,000 square feet. These units are 3 feet in height. Obviously, there's actually the same amount of bedrooms because these are 2 bedrooms, and our project will be 3 bedrooms. But they are taller, they're townhouse-style units, and they're less in line with really the individual single-family homes that Stonegate has within their community. If you go, if you want to back out a little bit, so that's really the closest abutters. Everything on the non-residential side of Turnpike Road, everything on our side with the multifamily, the industrial, and the commercial that all goes around Stonegate. I know this is hard to read on the screen, and I apologize, but hopefully you can read them in your packet, all these little tiny numbers. But what we did was we said, okay, well, if they're concerned that we're not in line with what Chelmsford is and the density in the area, let's go ahead and look at some of these other developments. What is the density? We're a smaller lot. We're about 32,000 square feet. We're asking for 6 units. We're about, I think I did the math, and I'll look at my engineer when I do this, but I think we're about 5,200 square feet per unit out here, okay? So if you look at that first chart, the one in the blue on the left-hand side, that is looking at all the projects that are zoned RM and what the actual square footage per 2 unit is. Now again, I will tell you a little caveat. We took this information off of GIS. So there is that caveat, so it's only as good as that information is, which I won't say anything negative about that on the TV. But there's actually 2 lines as well. So there's one line that's overall lot area, and then there's the actual buildable area. So we actually went through and tried to subtract the floodplain and the wetlands and the other things that get subtracted from the overall lot area. And it's hard to see on this one, but you can see on your chart and on here, there's 2 lighter colors. And if you go down to the bottom of those, you can see what the median and average size is. So in the RM zoning district, the average per lot, square footage per lot is 4,605. And the median is 4,792. That's for RM developments. We are 5,202 per unit. So we actually have more space. If you look at the second chart, the orange one, this is multifamily use all over Chelmsford. Doesn't matter if it's RM, doesn't matter how we got there permitting wise, but we looked at the overall density for these and we said, okay, so for this type of permitting, how many lots do we get per square foot within these developments? And we actually went out and did the math. We found out that the average was 3,598 and the median is 3,441. Again, I think it's worth stating again that we're 5,202. Okay, the yellow, it looks mustard yellow, I think I called it brown in my presentation, but the mustard yellow chart up there in the right-hand corner, those are projects that have actually been approved within your BAOD, CEIOD overlay. A couple of them weren't approved subject to those special permits, but they're in the overlay themselves. The average land area per unit on those was 2,134. Again, we're 5,202. And the green chart is all multifamily projects along Turnpike and Mill Road. There's just a handful, obviously. But the average land area per unit there was 4,132, and the median was 3,342. So we didn't go into this lightly. We actually did look at the areas, we looked at different projects, we looked at different densities, we looked in the RM, and we really think that we are in line for what's allowed per square footage, per unit, in any of these areas, really. We have all of the land area. If you go down one more. So this is just, we looked just at Stonegate, because we did have a lot of Stonegate abutters at the last project, and we know that they're residential. But we looked at the surrounding area just to see what the uses were, because I think I made a statement that this area was mixed use, and I think some people took issue with that, but it really is mixed use. If you look at the area as a whole, we have industrial uses, we have commercial uses, we have multifamily uses, we have single-family uses. And although that might be seen as a negative, it's actually a positive for the BAOD, because that's what we're trying to do, is build something that works together in harmony so we can live there, work there, and play there. I think the other issue that I heard is these units are going to be very close, and they're going to be noisy, and we're worried about what impact that will have on our daily life as to noise. So we actually did go ahead again and go down, Colleen, one more. And we looked at the distance. Okay, so what are we? What are we to our closest units to the Stonegate butters? And as you can see, and I can't read from that far, but I think we're about 78 feet from one corner and about 85 feet from one corner. Okay, so that's where we are. We actually pulled the center of the Stonegate development themselves, and you can see that and again, I'm having trouble reading this, but I think the Stonegate abutters to themselves in the center, and there's some measurements there, 80 feet, 79 feet, 82 feet, 83 feet. So we actually are matching their proximity from structure to structure. But if you actually go outside of Stonegate itself and look at the noise producers that are outside of the development, if you go down on another slide, Colleen.
12 feet.
This is the first building, the first use I talked about. This is Waddington development. And let me see, where is Waddington? I can't even see the slide number. The water tower there is about 81 feet from the closest Stonegate abutter. You can see it mapped out in the little line right there. And the closest to the structure is about 70 to 75 feet. And if you go down one more slide, Colleen. The next one is the industrial and commercial daycare. And you can see the setback to the closest structure to Stonegate at that development is about 82 feet. And if you go down, oh, that's Orchard Woods. So that one is, the one on the right-hand side is Orchard Woods. And you can see that is about 80 to 85 feet. So again, if you go back to the building-to-building structure setback, we are actually in line with all those industrial and commercial developments and the multifamily development that's existing today. But I would argue, with the exception of that multifamily development, we're actually less impactful, certainly from a noise basis, from any of their surrounding uses. I know that you have a lot of other information to take this evening, and I did think it was important to go through this just to make sure we talked about density and setbacks and noise, because that's really what I took from the last presentation. And I wanted the board to see that we actually did do our legwork. We're not going into this lightly. We've tried to design a project that fits into the community, fits into the CEIOD, fits into the BAOD, and really fits into the purpose and intent of the bylaw. And I'm happy to answer any other questions the board may have. I know that the public would like to speak as well, so I will stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any initial comments here before I open up the public hearing? Do we have anything to read? Just take a look and see. I don't believe that we do. Let me note, by the way, that we've received a great deal of email. There's so much of it that reading it's going to be impractical. It will be in the record. I have a copy of it here. It's got to be.
You already read this?
That's from, yes.
Any in favor of it?
Huh?
Any in favor of it, of the project?
Do I need what?
Any email in favor of the project?
Well, we'll get to that when we open up the public hearing. Any comments or requests before I open her up? Nope. Okay. That said, this is a public hearing, and why don't we get started? Please identify yourself and
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Scott Erickson. I'm with the firm of Perkins and Ansel. We also have a slide presentation, so I'm sorry to bore you with some more statistics.
Oh, no, that's okay. We were expecting it.
Figures. I thought you might be.
Yeah.
What's that? That TV isn't working. I think I just have to work with this television here. And I do have some handouts we can get to folks later. As you know, my partner was here at the last meeting, Robert Ansel. We represent the Stonegate Condominium Trust. And we have a PowerPoint slide to present some of the concerns. We sent in a letter to this board on February 22nd identifying our legal concerns regarding the project. And we're not going to reiterate all of those here tonight. There's a lot of folks here that want to speak, but we're going to focus on a few of the major issues. And those are the failure of this project and these applications to comply with Mass General laws and the Town of Chelmsford zoning bylaws, the excessive density of this project, and the project's overall incompatibility with the existing neighborhood. I did not have the benefit of Attorney Robbins' presentation before this evening, but I will address that quickly at the end of the slide presentation. So we can scroll down to the first slide, and some of this is like a social studies lesson, so I'll get through it as quickly as I can. Zoning, again, the RM zoning district, the underlying zoning district where this property is located, is designed to support density-appropriate residential development. And while it is multifamily, the regulations state that for a single-family home, you need 40,000 square feet. Our interpretation, certainly, of the multifamily is that 80,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit, whichever is greater. This is a 31,000 square foot, less than 3/4 of an acre lot. The trust is extremely concerned that a patchwork application of the overlays here is going to lead to bad outcomes, not only on this property, but potentially throughout Chelmsford. It is really a cherry picking of particular sections of the zoning bylaw to try to end run what is the appropriate scale of development for this site. So we can scroll down a little bit here to the next slide. And this is, again, this is social studies. We took this data from the census, U.S. Census data. The town of Chelmsford is about 15,000 acres in size. According to the United States Census Bureau, the average number of residents per home in Massachusetts is about 2.58. In Chelmsford, you have a population density of about 2.28 residents per acre, which, when you think about the underlying zoning district, makes sense. That's about one family per home on a 1 acre, 2 acre site. For reference, the closest urban area to Chelmsford is obviously Lowell, and Lowell has a density per acre of about 11.43 residents. If we flip to the next slide, you can see a visual here, and I apologize for the folks in the back who can't see this. The proposed project is 6 single-family homes on 0.71 acres. If we ascribe to those 6 residences the 2.53 average residents per home, we're talking about 21 residents per acre. That is 10 times the density of Chelmsford on an average basis. And it's roughly double Lowell's density. So again, the concern from a density standpoint is that by applying this sort of patchwork of bylaw provisions, you're going to end up with urban level density on rural, suburban size and suited properties. If we go to the next slide, you know, and actually I'll address Attorney Robbins' position here. We talk about incompatibility with the neighborhood character. You know, Stonegate is a dense project. It is not as dense as the proposed project. And I guess, you know, what I heard there was the sort of two wrongs theory. Well, if Stonegate's already surrounded by this, this, and this, then what's the harm in the proposed project? That's not what this board is charged with doing. You're charged as stewards of the bylaws and of the community to put in what's best for the community in light of the bylaws. So the fact that there may be other potentially offensive uses within a nearby, you know, a stone's throw from some of these Stonegate residents really doesn't change that. And we think the density goes a long way to showing that incompatibility. If we flip down to the next slide. You know, because the property is so tight, the use of it for the project essentially eliminates all natural buffer, such as it is, that exists on the site. It would pretty much devastate all of the vegetation along that line. There isn't much there to begin with. You know, it would create noises, it would create emissions. There are privacy issues. I expect the residents here are going to speak to those, so I won't belabor that. I want to move on to sort of the exceptional nature of the request for relief here, which I really think underscores the incompatibility. It's telling to me that a project of this size, which is 6 residential units, is requesting half a dozen special permits to get through. I mean, if you think about that from the standpoint of what you just saw before this hearing tonight and what you typically see, 6 special permits for 6 residential units is a significant number. And I think that underscores the sort of machinations that we'd have to go through to say, okay, yes, this does work here. It may if you go through all those steps, but it's contrived and it's a patchwork. So that, I think, underscores the incompatibility of the project. And that sort of segues into the next piece, which is, you know, the nature of this exceptional relief and its incompatibility with Massachusetts law. The courts of the Commonwealth have said that special permit relief concerns, and I'm quoting here, uses thought under the zoning code to be potentially acceptable in the zoning district, but only after and subject to review and permission of the permit granting authority, you folks, to the end that the use as applied for be compatible with the allowed uses in the area to which it is to be planted. Where this is to be planted is a residential neighborhood, predominantly a single-family residential neighborhood. And so, you know, we don't think it squares with Massachusetts law. And not only do we think it doesn't square with Massachusetts law, we don't think it squares with the bylaw. I know Attorney Robbins indicated that Town Council had provided an opinion on the applicability of the BAOD and the CEIOD. We respectfully disagree with that opinion. The CEIOD in particular is clearly delineated, both on the GIS map and in terms of the zoning districts to which it applies. RM zoning district is not included. We're piggybacking here because the BAOD is applicable to this site. We're then using that to loop into the CEIOD, but again, it's this patchwork, this cherry picking of particular provisions. So we don't think that the proposed project satisfies the mandatory findings or criteria that this board would have to find in connection with any special permit, which is under Article 19. We don't think it conforms with the minimum lot area or the minimum setbacks under Attachment 2, which is the table of dimensional regulations. In fact, I do have a question afterwards about the applicant's plan on sheet 2. You know, they list the relevant setbacks and area calculations here, and sort of they apply the CEIOD. I'm just not sure that those match up. The CEIOD actually has different lot area coverages and setbacks depending on what underlying zoning district applies. And of course, since the CEIOD does not identify RM zoning as one of the CEIOD covered areas, there is no good choice for this plan. So that, in a nutshell, on the last slide there, is the issue. Again, the project by any objective measure is excessively dense, and we think that our approval would open the door for, again, urban levels of development in what are rural and suburban neighborhoods. We don't believe the project is compatible with existing neighborhood structure, and we certainly don't believe that the project complies with applicable law. I will be happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but I want to give a lot of folks here an opportunity to speak.
Anybody on the board have a particular question that they'd like to offer up? Okay, that said, now, we have a number of people that want to speak, and I want to get everybody in. But I would ask you to avoid repeating arguments that have already been heard. I know there's a temptation to do that. I would in your shoes too, but let's try to keep this reasonably concise if we can. Hi.
Of course.
Of course. How you doing?
Hi, Chris Bowman, 3 Julio Street, Precinct 4 Representative. I just want to say that the prior letter I sent to the Planning Board on February 27th outlined specific reasons why this project does not conform to the zoning bylaws. So in an effort to help assist the Planning Board in seeing what are the zoning bylaws, what's the specificity, what is the specificity of this project, and what's the outcome based on that direct comparison. So with that, I incorporated a chart with the letter for today to the Planning Board. So I know you can all read. So therefore, I will not belabor each and every item. However, I will reiterate that one thing, before I do that, one thing Attorney Robbins did not address amongst the multitude of things she was looking at is she did not look at the RM district requirements. Those requirements are very specific. The minimum lot size requirement for an RM district project is 80,000 square feet. This project does not meet that at 31,202 square feet. The density, once the 80,000 square foot minimum lot size requirement is met, is 2 to 4 units per acre. So right off the bat, these two basic requirements in an RM district are not met. In addition to that, the affordable housing units per the inclusionary bylaw requires 25% of a project to be set aside for affordable units. So 25% of 6 is 1.5. You have to round up because you can't have fractional units, so that is two units. Now, the payment in lieu of providing affordable units is set out in a schedule, a PLO schedule, in the inclusionary housing bylaw. So these units, these 6 units are all 1-bedroom units, and the PLO schedule is $100,000 per unit. So 2 times that is $200,000. Now the PLO payment that was previously discussed in January of this year is $5,000. That does not comport. That needs to be revised and relooked at. This project is not a commercial by right project. It is a special permit project, and it is a residential project. The CEIOD only applies to commercial districts that are CA, CB, CC, CD, or IA. That is very clear in the CEIOD. Town Council's letter of last year does not address that specifically. His opinion is not consistent with the zoning bylaws. In addition to that, so therefore the dimensions used by this project are commercial by right dimensions. They're not allowed in an RM district. You have to use the RM district dimensions, which is attachment 2 to the zoning articles, not attachment 3, which are for CEIOD commercial projects. And any BAOD project has to conform to the CEIOD project. CEIOD project is not applicable. BAOD is also not applicable. This RM district was formed in the 1990s, is very clear, is very distinct, and is not commercial, period. You can see the other specificity of the dimensions that are outlined and that are provided on the site plan. So the project does provide RMCIOD proposed and shows the existing dimensions, but its proposed dimensions are bounced off the CIOD dimensions. Also, within the inclusionary housing bylaw, there is also a section that requires projects to be consistent with the 2011 Affordable Housing Plan in order to blend in and have compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood in scale, aesthetics, and density, and not negatively impact the residential neighborhoods. So overall, this project does not conform to the zoning bylaws for an RM district. It's not compatible. It's not aesthetically compatible. The density is way too dense for the area and is not part of what the RM district is about. So thank you very much for listening. Do you have any questions for me?
No, thanks a lot, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Brian Latina, Precinct 4. I'm a town meeting rep, and I live at 15 Jesse Road, which is about a half a mile, I guess, west of this location. I was intrigued by the first presenter that I don't think she lives here. I've never heard of an industrial, what's the term? Industrial daycare center. Never heard of that term before, and the little daycare brick building was up on that corner there, and it shouldn't be a wedge to allow housing development of this nature to go in a property that's smaller than my lot, which is just down the street. The property above that they were talking about is in an industrial area, a big warehouse kind of area up there. And there's also some power lines up there as well. Can't build in that area. And I was intrigued by, they were going to put a walking trail and benches, but they forgot to put parking in that 6-unit area. And I suspect, much like it was called Turnpike Woods when they first put it in, and I fought it, the 40B at the other end of Stonegate. And a lot of the people moved out when they built that property because one of the problems was it had density and concerns in 1.9 wet acres. And it was convenient that the attorney took out any of the wet acres. This was an area on the I guess it's the north side of the Stonegate property and just beyond the little blue house that's been there for many years. That using the 40B properties that are forced on Chelmsford, and one that I think no one else in this room fought except me. I went to 4 different meetings and fought with Mr. Carey and his property when he tried to stick in 28 units called Turnpike Woods. It was an unfortunate name, so they changed it to Orchard Woods. A little history there. And Mr. Carey met me in the hall and he said, "You're pretty good," because I fought it with several of the laws that we have and several of the building conditions that we expect in a rural community. I used the American with Disability Act to stop the 40B on the other side of Stonegate. The American with Disability Act would imply that you can't put housing on a second floor because it's not handicap accessible. If you have sleeping quarters only on the second floor, that's illegal. That's American with Disability Act violation. And a funny part is a similar thing in a property that they used in their calculation to tell us that this density is fine for our town. The projects on Mill at 3, I think is what they're called now. It used to be called the Princeton projects. 108 units. I think they put in 4 handicap locations in there. And at the time, our town attorney was the chairman of the ZBA approving that. They violated the American with Disability Act on that project too, and they got a variance to the American with Disability Act. There's a 12% grade sidewalk on that property, and it was approved by the ZBA prior to the variance. That's interesting. It's a federal violation. There's a handicapped school across the street. Those people couldn't live in that property because they can't get up the sidewalk. They can't get up the driveway. You can't push a vehicle, a chair up that. This is an RM district. There's 2 houses there. I met the lady that used to live there. I think she may have passed away and then passed it along to someone else. But I bought a chair that was in that same on that same street, Turnpike. I don't know if anybody knows what Turnpike is. This was the route to Boston back in the very early days. You gave a penny at the Turnpike, and they turned the pike. They blocked the road so your wagon couldn't go to Boston. That's the name of the street. That's what that is. That's not a raceway. And you know what? You can't park on Turnpike in the winter, so I don't know where those 12 cars are going to park. That's illegal in Chelmsford to park on a town street in the winter. You need parking on the property. As far as the property just above them, it floods. The town finally, after 25 years of me complaining and one of the other gentlemen complaining, finally got out and figured out a way to drain that water from the hill and in. We've lost 9 to 12 cars. I lost count when the brand new police car drowned on Anstey Road a few years back. It was kind of a secret. It's 2 weeks old. You won't find that in the newspaper. I have pictures. That road floods completely. If you build another property with 12 units and you keep the water on the property, it'll probably be similar to the project at Mill Road and Route 3. That floods. There's a big puddle there. Activity on that street now has 168 units. First building's complete. The roof is going on the second building. Those are called stubbies. They're all over the world. It's 4-on-1 and 5-on-1 wooden structure above a concrete or basement area. It's very popular, and it's changed in the last 10 years. These properties have been allowed to build these wooden structures because they put sprinkler systems in them. And they've been creeping into not only our community, but all over the world. They're in New Jersey and all over other places. That is completely inappropriate for our area as well. But we passed that. The planning board agreed to that one. They put it in an IA district before it was allowed. Our bylaw said that you cannot put residential in an IA district. And interestingly, at the next town meeting, we changed that mistake in the bylaw after the planning board approved that project. So I suspect we can probably redesign this RM district and allow these buildings to go in if you were to approve it. As far as the water tower in the back and the industrial daycare, strange name, snowplow that you see there, that's in a wetlands. That was an interesting comment. The snowpile there is in a wetlands, I know, because I got it certified a vernal pond. It dries up in the summertime. And at the time that the project next door was approved, I was challenging it on these different bases, and one of them was Wetland Protection Act. 1.9 wet acres with a state-certified vernal pond meant that you couldn't cut any trees down to make the sightline work. Now, from a practical point of view, that meant you can't build there. So before the plan was approved by the ZBA as a 40B, the state forces us to do those, the town came out and cut the trees in the wetlands. I presented them with the certified vernal pond letter from the state. They promptly ignored it. By the time I got home from work, they had cut the trees down prior to the planning board or the ZBA approving that project. So the town kind of is in cahoots when they want to build some extra properties here. August 9th of 2017, this board had a working session. The planning board did. I never saw the minutes to it. I don't know if you have to do minutes for planning session. This particular project, 152 Turnpike Road, was discussed. And one of the board members actually asked the developer if instead of I think they were looking at 6 or 7 units at the time, if they could build 8 or 9 units. And he jumped up and thought that was great. Yes, we could certainly do that. Those aren't in the minutes because I don't see them. That's a problem. That's a problem. This is a residential area. Mostly we have single-family houses in that area. They did put in the CEIOD, the BAOD, and the interesting thing was at town meeting when we voted on it, we had a map in front of us, and that map had this area cut out because there's residential there. It's RM district. Stonegate is an RM district. You can't build this in that area. And I'll leave you with with this, I was intrigued by the dimensional discussions about the square foot and the areas. Those are related to number of acres. This isn't even an acre. It's not even half, I guess it's close to half an acre. This is a single-family house. This is a single-family lot. Somebody's trying to make some money. We're already beyond our 10% affordable housing requirement, so you don't need to add a whole bunch more homes in there. And by the map, everyone in this room needs to stop by the map and take a look at what they're about to put in your neighborhood. There's a map on the wall in the conference room there. This isn't the only project that's under the works right now. This is one you need to stop because it gets used
I'm
against
sorry, the
us.
audience is over here.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry. You need to push back on every one of these projects because this is the second time as a town meeting rep I've come to one of these, and they explained, well, because these duplexes are next door, I should be able to put an RM district over here on Ready Way. I should be able to put duplexes and cram them in here because somebody needs a swimming pool. Now we're being told that because the town accepted a 40B next door to these folks, because they accepted that, we're going to use that against you because we're going to go out and find densities that match what we want to do. I can find you a bunch of densities in that neighborhood within walking distance that are single-family houses that are less than an acre with one family living in them. Let's start looking at the densities of the residents that live here now rather than the people that the developers want to come move in to a single-family house lot. Thank you very much.
Richard Malloy, 67 Stonegate Road. Many of my concerns about these 6 cottage-style condos are much the same as has been stated over and over here. Overbuilding on an undersized lot, traffic, parking, drainage, privacy, lack of green space, plowing, trash pickup. But there are also other concerns. Devaluation of the surrounding properties, impact on services and schools, namely the South Row School, as these units are not restricted, age restricted. The other major concern is the fact that this builder may be allowed to circumvent required lot size regulations and zoning, get special permits, and positively not adhere to what has already been passed. He may get a special permit for a low-income waiver fee. Instead of paying $200,000, he'll pay only a small token fee of $5,000. The negative impact on the town for this project far outweighs any possible positive impact. There is no benefit to the town. It is only the financial benefit of the developer. It will, in addition, open the doors for other developers to also seek special permits. It's up to the planning board to make the correct decision for the residents, taxpayers, and homeowners of Chelmsford. That decision should be to not grant special permits for developers and have them follow the existing rules of building and zoning for all of Chelmsford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine McDonald, Precinct 1 Town Rep, but I was written to by someone, and he asked if I could speak, and I said, yeah, I had a lot of several points. I'm a little bit disquieted to backtrack a little bit. When town meeting rep, the overlay district, what I took away from it is all those empty buildings that there would be restaurants on the first floor and office space on the second and third floor, and then they'd throw some housing on top so that, you know, there would be cars there all the time, but it would be live, work, play, and, you know, more restaurants, and because that area is kind of restaurant light. And I said, oh yeah, I can vote for that. There was no saying, we're going to take a little bit of lots and stick a bunch of condos on it. So that was not what we were told the purpose was. The purpose was to take 129 and make it multi-used. So instead of being just office buildings, be retail, restaurants, living space, and business space. I'm also a near abutter to a project that was approved and on the corner of Hunt and 110. And I was told by several people, some of them here tonight, saying, well, oh, you know, Elaine, it'll be good because that means all the 40Bs are going to be closed out. I'm sorry, I am not an expert on the COBIQURSYZ thing.
Close.
I'm not. And as a tech writer, I'm mad at all of you because you just like say them like as if we all know what they mean. You're supposed to say what it means, and then you can use the abbreviations afterwards. That's not, you know, all this stuff. You know, that project being put near my house, the big apartment complex, I was told, okay, then Chelmsford can calm down because we hit our 40B limit, yay. All right, fine. It's not. So that's not what I was sold to as a town meeting rep, that I thought 129, as a woman who drives every day to Burlington, I very much want 129 to be rehabbed because I came to Chelmsford because I had a job at the time at Brooks Automation off of 129. I would like 129 to be a vital work area. I wouldn't mind a few restaurants too. And I'd be happy if they want to throw a few floors on top so that people, so the youngins who don't want to drive can, you know, walk downstairs and program their little tuk-tukas off. But this is not what I agreed to as a town meeting rep. This is not what I expected as a person who was kind of forced to look at a big apartment complex every 2 minutes after I'm out of my driveway. So I don't understand how this has gotten as far as this has. So I support the people who are saying, hey, because the lawyer who spoke, I was sitting there quietly going, yeah! So I'm going to give up my time. So I'm sure other people have points and understand all the, unlike like Ms. Bowman obviously understands the overlay zones better than I do. But I think I speak for many people in town that we feel tricked. So thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
George Zarulis, Princeton Street, North Chelmsford. There was a question about, or a statement made earlier about rights and benefits of an RM. So the question I think that needs to be asked is, if this was straight RM, what could it be? And that would probably be a determination by the building inspector. But to go further, 195, 118.3 deals with zoning standards. I'm just trying to think. And it says that the project is superior to that possible under the conventional standards and requirements of underlying zones. So that goes back to the statement I just made. Then if you go to 195, 118, A3, I'll read it.
I need my copy.
I'm getting there.
You can get that. I can make you.
Improve access of, make sure that's the right one. 5A3. Project is superior possible in conventional standards. 195B1 says affordable housing opportunities. So I'd like to know what the affordable housing opportunities are here. This is supposed to be part of the inclusionary. I know that there was a talk about payment in lieu. Have they provided sufficient evidence? The inclusionary calls for that they have to provide sufficient evidence that they need a reduction, and that reduction is a discretion of this board. So just to say we want a reduction, when this board had Gristmill before it, they provided us with some reasonings why they needed a reduction, and this board granted it those reasonings. So, and 195.18B6 talks about pedestrian scale. Project provides building footprints and articulations appropriately scaled to encourage outdoor pedestrian circulation. Features buildings with appropriate space, street level windows, entrances, Includes appropriate provisions for crossing all driveway entrances and internal roadways, allows pedestrian access, appropriate place, encourage walking to and through the development site. So that goes to, is there sidewalks being provided here along the street and throughout the development? I didn't see it, so, and then B7 talks about public gathering space. The development further down on Turnpike Road had a public gathering space. They had swimming pools and playgrounds, that type of thing. So those are some of the things I didn't see in this presentation, and if I missed it, I apologize, but those are a couple of things that I think this board needs to ask questions on, and it's at the discretion. Oh, and the other one was, what is the rear yard setbacks on this project?
This is the front, which is what they're using as the front. These are the fronts. This is the front. So that's the determination.
The rear yard is 24 feet.
So the
Oh, what we're proposing, 31.
the rear yard and side yard setbacks?
21.
20.
Yeah, but it's
So-
not 21. The front door's
So,
right here.
195, 114, dimensional regulations. B says adjacent to residential uses, minimum 25-foot side and rear setback shall be provided. So that's something this board should examine as well. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, George.
Hi, my name is sorry, Ambrish Verma. I'm in one of those units where the attorney for the developer showed with the water tank. There were two units in that. I'm from 33, which is one of those. And what you didn't see in that slide was there's a big warehouse right next to the water tank, which which they have to have air conditioning in the summer. While everybody's waiting here for summer, we are dreading it because the noise from the air conditioning. We can't open the windows. We can't hear the birds. We can't hear the kids play in the yard. So it's absolutely not right to have any unit or anything 80 feet across from you. I mean, two wrongs don't make a right. Laws were written and rules were written to be followed. Please, it's your job to follow them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Curtis Barton, 15 State Street, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Rep. The discussion of the average space and all that of pre-existing buildings is totally irrelevant in this case. Why? If you look around that area, and I live in the area south of Mill Road, if you look at all that area south of Mill Road, there's not a lot down there that's got an acre. They're half-acre lots. If you go across the street, most of those are half-acre lots. They don't conform to the current bylaws at all. Why? They were built in the 1960s when the bylaws were totally different. The only relevant thing here is can you actually do this project? You might be able to approve this, but you shouldn't. It just simply is out of character for this town. If you want to live in Somerville, move there.
I'm Yasser from 61 Stonegate Road. I'm one of the abutters who are right behind this property. I moved there a couple of years ago, knowing that Chelmsford is a great town, it is a good schools. But since I moved, like 6 or 7 months later, we started looking into, okay, there's going to be a big development right in our backyard, where we thought our children can play like easily. There will be like no issue for them to be alone there. But since then, we have been hearing about this property, like 6, sometimes 15, sometimes 9 units. It's a big concern for us. South Road today is a good school, but with 168 more units on Turnpike Road, we think that we are not sure how the elementary schools or the middle schools will be in the future. Also, as Attorney Robinson mentioned earlier, that about the 80 feet distance from other properties. On those sides, there are trees, but in this case, there will be no trees anymore. So we cannot compare this to another, again, which everyone has already said, 2 wrongs don't make things right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, I'm not going to close this. Oh, go right ahead. I didn't see you.
All right, I don't know who's wanting to speak. I spoke again. My name's Michael Cooney, 69 Stonegate Road. I'd like to talk about some of the things Mrs. Robbins said about the 40B next to it. I was here then. I've been a first-time homeowner at Stonegate Road. I love the town. I love living here. My son's closest friend lived on that cul-de-sac, and they packed up and moved. Neighbors next to them are good friends of ours. They all moved. They had a nice lot. The 40B came in. They all moved. We lost a great lot of neighbors. Property values took a big dip for a while. People who live now weren't there when it wasn't there, so they're not used to that. People live on the side over here. We all live here. We've been here since the very beginning. And now you're going to come in, and it's going to be a completely different landscape behind us. And then we may have to move. Which then we bring the property values down again. And next people come in, they won't mind it because they see it already. 40B was not a good thing for us. We lost a lot of nice people. The other thing she mentioned was all the how many square foot there are. Is she including like 104 Turnpike Road as part of the requirement to get that dimension, whether it's 6 stories high? Compare it to other residential properties like Stonegate Road, there aren't many. We're very unique. We go to meetings now, people ask us, oh, can you build another Stonegate Road? Not enough profit. Stonegate Road has 4 units per acre. This property here has 8 units per acre. We have 14.8 acres altogether. We have streets. I came home today, parents and the children riding the bikes around the street, kids are walking. There's a place to play and socialize. I love that about the neighborhood. This does not have that. And these are going to turn into rental properties, because once the people buy them and move out, people aren't want to not make the money back, don't have to rent them. It happened in Stonegate at first. People couldn't get the money they bought when they first bought it, and they tried to rent them all. And we had to put a limit on renting. I see this in the future as it becoming rental property. You have a birthday party, where they're going to park. Only one car can go out the driveway. You guys have to go park down some other road and walk up to the birthday party. We're going to drop you off and turn the car around and come back out. We like the design. We have no problem with a couple of them there. We tried to work with them. We asked to work within our own density at one point, which is 4 units per acre, and was told not enough profit. It's about the profit. How about the cost, the quality of life these people are going to have? I appreciate them taking advantage of putting a nice unit together, but why 6? I'd like to read one thing about the land use policy for Chelmsford. Chelmsford's land use policy should include prioritizing and redevelopment of existing structures rather than promoting new construction. It should include new zoning regulations that control and encourage redevelopment where there is 0 net increase in square building footage. That was the vision people who wrote these had for Chelmsford. And we need to follow that vision. I want to stay here. I want to be a part of this community. And I hope my children can come live here when they're out of college, but they come back and live in our community. Please don't allow this to come in.
Thank you.
My name is Kara Haas. I live on 116 Turnpike Road. I'll just speak briefly. It's more for my children. They go to the industrial daycare, which I don't know what that means, at Club Kid, which we love, and we moved to the South Road District for the South Road schools. We have a huge, I'll call it a monstrosity, next to us being built, being at 116 Turnpike Road. My children can't take naps anymore because there's constant construction. There's building all around us. And we're afraid. We're thinking we should just move out of town because this is not where we want our kids to grow up. And that makes me so sad because I love it here. Our children love it here. We're so proud to be in Chelmsford, and our children love South Row. My eldest goes there. They went to Club Kid. It's just a tragedy, and it makes me really sad. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I'm wondering, how many more do we have? I know you would like to speak, because I see you in line. I'm just trying to get an idea how many more, whether we need to take a break. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Again, try to keep it to new material if you can. Please.
Good evening. My name is Donna Newcomb, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Representative. I'm here, obviously, to speak about the Turnpike Road development. And I've had a chance to go out there and take a look at the property and to meet with some of the residents out at Stonegate. I don't think people can appreciate the position that you're in, and I only know this being on the school committee where there's so many competing interests, right? You're trying to serve the requests and the needs of many, many people in town. Okay, and one of the things that we hear on a frequent basis is you know, for example, you know, we would like our taxes to not be going up so much. And I get that, okay? And I take that very seriously as a school committee member as I look at our budget and things like that. As a town meeting representative, back when these discussions began about the business overlay district, I really struggled with this. It was a conflict for me because I knew that the development of the town was, well, very necessary because there's so many things that we would like to be able to do in this town that cost money, whether it be through the police department or fire department, schools, DPW, you name it. Okay, there's only so much money available, and we have to be able to increase the size of the pie in order for everybody to get a bigger slice. So I understood that, okay, and I voted for a lot of the 129 recommendations, knowing that it would change the character of the town to a certain degree. But this is something else altogether. And this isn't what I was looking for when I was looking for that 129 commercial development. And I understand the point, but I think that when I hear the residents talking about preserving open space, maintaining the integrity and the character of the town, I realize that once we start doing things like this, we're going to destroy that. And you know, okay, because I've seen you at town meeting time and time again, you hear people saying, enough is enough. Okay, we have to make wise decisions. We have to be thoughtful, okay, in the planning for our town. We recognize that there are many needs and we have to address those, but we cannot ignore our history or the vision that we have for the future of our town. So I would ask you to seriously consider whether or not this is something that you want to approve, and whether or not it's in keeping with your mission, which says, the planning board strives to guide land use and management that preserves the character and integrity of the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Richard Stander, 153 Turnpike Road. I'm right across the street from the project. I've seen a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics thrown around, but when I took my statistics course in college, the instructor started off saying there are statistics and then there are damn statistics. And basically, you can say anything with statistics and probably come out looking like a winner. But let's get to reality. And I have some questions actually for the audience. First,
please direct to us. We can direct them back out to the audience.
I'd like to see a response from the audience. So, how many people here today, tonight, live within 1,000 feet of 152 Turnpike Road?
Yeah, probably most. Yeah.
Probably most.
Okay.
Do they feel that this density is acceptable?
Please address to us.
Well, I think it's good to get some feedback from the residents.
We will get the feedback.
Oh, okay. All right. So moving on, I saw presentations about density. The 152 Turnpike Road, there were 3 people living in that home on 0.71 acres. Yeah. And we're replacing that with a much more densely populated situation. In my home, there were 4 people maximum. Next door to me, there were 3 people maximum. These are all small families that live in this area, and they have a half an acre, give or take, sometimes more. And we're really, I think, changing the complete character of the neighborhood by introducing this high-density housing into this area. It definitely is a change from what is currently in the area. So I really feel that is disruptive to the character of the neighborhood and destructive to how we live our lives, how we're used to living our lives. The other area of concern is traffic and parking. It was indicated to me on a previous meeting that Turnpike Road is a no parking district. However, there's no signs in existence on Turnpike Road. Nothing that says no parking, so somebody can park there. This particular area is the narrowest section of Turnpike Road. That's confirmed by the town engineer in one of the previous meetings. So we're building a situation really where we're going to run out of places to put snow, and we're going to have less and less room for pedestrians and children, frankly, riding their bicycles down the street. I feel it's going to create a dangerous situation in the neighborhood. And right now in the neighborhood, I think there's a lot of, is a place where children can ride their bicycles in relative safety, but I think this change would really put those lives in danger. The other thing is there's a sidewalk that's going to be going in across the street from me on the Turnpike, on the 152 side. So that will eliminate, in the dead of the winter, there will be it'll be very difficult to manage the snow there and keep that sidewalk open. The narrowness of the road is going to reduce even more when we have large snowbanks. So there's going to be very little room for one car going in each direction and a pedestrian, for example. If we have a parked car, that's really going to pull it down to about a lane and a half. So I think it's going to create a lot of, a lot of hazardous situations if we have parking on Turnpike Road. So those are my concerns, and I've seen a lot of accidents in that particular area, many of them right in front of the 152 Turnpike Road, because it's sort of where you have a flat and then they're coming up a hill. There's a bit of a blind spot there, and there have been a number of accidents there. So those are my concerns, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Hey, I'm Michael Brenneman, 71 Stonegate Road, one of the abutters on the backside, or right beside the ones that are there, though. As I've heard tonight with everybody, they've all hit every point basically that I wanted to talk about, so I'm not gonna too much on it. But I've been in Chelmsford now for 27 years. I came out of Peabody when we first looked in Chelmsford. We came here, and we came into Chelmsford with the community in our sights, nice school systems, having the neighborhoods, and just everything being what it was in Chelmsford. And we invested in our property there. And for 27 years, when you buy a piece of property and you invest, you hope that your investment is a good one, that you maybe make some money if you sell down the road to go move on to maybe a bigger house or something like that. Same as JN Realty has done. They've made an investment in a piece of property, which, to my point, and I think that what everybody has stressed here, they're trying to grossly over mass produce houses on, which isn't in line with the way the neighborhood is. I know you all have a responsibility, and I know that, it's a tough job. There's a lot of things you look at and things underlying that you have to look at and how you make your decision. I hope that this decision tonight is not in favor of them, and not saying that it's going to kill their project. It's just going to downsize their project. I think it's grossly overdone. So with that, I'd just like to say in closing, I'd like to quote an American anthropologist, Margaret Mead, who says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." Thank you.
Thank you. I do love that quote from Margaret Mead. It's one of my favorites, too. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jerry Hall. I'm at 34 Lovett Lane. And 35 years ago, when I came to Chelmsford looking in the area to buy, people warned me off certain towns. They said, yeah, they've got nice zoning in place, but they offer so many exceptions, you might as well not have zoning. And I ended up in Chelmsford and very happy there. I'm worried that we are now falling into the slippery slope of having too many exceptions to the rule. And I just want to say, go slow. That's my theme, go slow. And as far as the density of Somerville goes, I'm originally from Somerville, and I had a lot more room than those things. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Virginia Crocker Timmons. I live at 28 Lovett Lane. I have visited the neighborhood and walked the property lines, and I also want to just say that there are people all over town watching this because they're concerned. And I don't think, fundamentally, I think this is really a density issue. It's not an issue with making that property better. It's an issue with home values, with quality of life, and the safety concerns that have been brought forward. So I would just ask that you please make your decision community-centric.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Virginia. Okay. I don't.
The letters? You said you got a bunch of emails and letters.
Yes, we did.
Were they all in favor of? Were they against? Or did they reject?
Well, we want you to step up and address us, just so we can get you on the microphone mostly. Thanks.
Michael Cooney again, 69 Stonegate Road. A lot of people contacted me as a contact person and wanted to come. Some people here today want to talk but are afraid to. They sent letters in. I'm not comfortable speaking in public.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous right now. My heart's beating away, but I'm up here.
We don't bite.
But they want their voices heard.
Yeah.
If you don't read them or get how would they know their voices heard?
Well, we certainly have received quite a number of emails, more than is reasonable for us to read out loud. That said, we've all got them.
Okay.
And they were, as you point out, they were generally negative. I don't think there was one, wild pro.
Okay.
On the other hand, that's a little bit to be expected. So anyway, we do have them. We do have them on file, and we've each got a set of them. I mean, I just got my combined copy at about 6 o'clock this evening, so you can bet I haven't read them all, but I've skimmed at least the beginnings of all of them.
They took time to write them, so I appreciate it.
Did, yeah, and I appreciate the time that people spend writing them.
And then I'm on Stonegate Road. I'm on the board. We're a voluntary board. We policed ourselves for 27 years without a management company.
Yeah.
And as it turned before, it's unheard of these days.
Yeah.
So we know what we're doing, and we're very comfortable with something that we can live with, and we're not comfortable with this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I don't see anybody else, so I see an attorney back there who's wiggling. Maybe not. Okay, is that it for the public input tonight? Okay. That said, before we go on, because one of the obvious things we could do at this point would be to close the public hearing. But I'd like to get a sense from the board which way they feel we might want to go. Call this a straw poll, if you will. We have much more deliberation to do, I'm convinced, as a board. But that said, is anybody willing to stake a position?
I would be.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course. I believe, for a number of reasons, I believe this project actually is consistent with the Bayoid. I believe that because it's now single family and it's only 6 units as opposed to being 15 units, I believe that does reflect more of a neighborhood quality than saying having a multifamily in your backyard. So I strongly support this project, as well as far as supporting any workers that might be in the area. I think it's a great alternative for new residents in Chelmsford.
Okay.
Plus, it's a new construction.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question, Mike? Can we ask a couple of questions, or are you just doing a straw poll right now?
Well, I was doing a straw poll, but we can at least question each
Well,
other.
I think we need to, I think there's been, I'm getting some feedback on this, but I think there's been, is it a one-bedroom homes, or are they three bedrooms?
They're threes.
Okay, so that, there was a difference of importance there, and then how many?
That's 18 bedrooms altogether.
Right, 18 bedrooms on one lot.
Hold it, please.
And then the only question I had too is regarding the discharge. Is it on-site for storm drainage, Christine, or is it coming onto Turnpike?
So I've asked them to keep their stormwater on their own site.
And is it on the drawings that we've seen?
They need to do some revisions to make that happen.
Okay. And then I still just haven't, I'm trying to get to my straw poll answer, right? Because, I mean, the CEOD and the BAOD were in place before me coming on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that I agree that this is what those two overlays were designed for. And, and I'm just, I'm trying to get a handle on, I did a site walk the other day. I walked Stonegate as well, where there was a couple of parties going on at Stonegate gatherings, where there was proper parking on Stonegate's lots. I just don't see the parking here.
Okay.
And I just don't, I don't know if anyone else on the board sees that as well, but I just don't, I see it as an issue. And it's normal for people to have guests over at least once in a while. And where are you gonna park? Turnpike, I almost got killed getting out of my car. So, that's my only question. And I have that as being the newbie on the board here to you guys. You guys have approved these overlays, and I look at you guys as the experts on that. I just wanted to know, was this really something you envisioned, or was it 129 for the overlays and not Turnpike? And that's the question I have for you guys.
I think Mike got a real good point as far as parking goes. If you got a three-bedroom house, let's say you have 2 teenagers and the parents, that's 3 cars. Where's the parking gonna, where's everybody gonna park? It's great if you got 2 little kids and parents, but I know in my house, my wife has a car, I have a car, my son has a car, my daughter has a car. There's 4 vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Each house, where do they go? The point that George brought up about the sidewalks, that's a whole nother thing. Where is everybody gonna walk? Down the middle of the street when it's full of cars?
Okay, well, you gotta, what's your take? We're doing a straw poll here.
I'm on the fence still.
Okay. Fair enough. Henry?
I'm on the fence too. I really, I would much rather see a couple 2 families in there than 6.
Okay.
Mike, can I weigh in?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll get you, we'll get them all the way. Well, actually, Hank?
Yeah, I can weigh in on open meeting. I read the town council's opinion.
Yeah.
And it seems like this project's legal with the overlay that was created. And the developers have worked really hard with this board in the town. But I've walked that site like 3 times, and I can't, in my mind, approve a project like this. It's just too small, too dense.
Okay, so your straw poll vote is negative.
You know it don't count.
Okay. Tim?
I have to agree with most of them. I'm on the fence. I think, listen to the public. First of all, getting on the board, being new, I'm still confused with the BOAD and all of, trying to figure it all out. The question about the 15 units, when they first came in front of us, it was a 15-unit project. And then we gave them feedback. They came back. I have to tell you, their proposal is incredible. You did a great job on it. But on the other side, which is very difficult for me to say, you're listening to the people. They just don't want it. And I can see where we wanted this on 129, like one of the speakers had said earlier. That's where we should be. And I think when you guys did this or voted it in, maybe Turnpike Road shouldn't have been included. And that's it, because that's what the people are saying. So I do like the project itself. I like what they did, but listening to everybody around you, I mean, it would be kind of hard to vote yes for this project.
So you're yes, no, we're on the fence.
I would say I'm on the fence unless something changes.
Okay. Mike?
I would say no.
Okay. Nan?
Wow. Colleen, could you scroll that down to the bird's eye view? Well, I think we're going, well, maybe it is up above. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, it's real close to the beginning.
This one?
There we go.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So, I've been giving this a whole lot of consideration the whole way through, and I really hated the apartment buildings. And these folks put a lot of effort into coming back with something that was architecturally consistent and usage consistent with the neighborhood in terms of the type of single-family housing. Fall town meeting, we updated the definition of RM, of multifamily, to include detached. But when I saw this, when it was circulated, that kind of clicked in my mind. And I said, look, if I take the property lines for H, which is the target property, I take that size property lines and I overlay it onto a street in Stonegate. The proximity of the houses on that street in Stonegate are just about the same thing that we're looking at here.
They're twice as dense.
No, you're talking about twice as dense in terms of all your acreage. I'm talking about if I take that particular space and I overlay it onto a street, how close are your houses together compared to how close are these houses together? And they're just about the same thing. So what I'm seeing here is another little jut-off street that has single-family houses that are about the same distance apart as the houses on Stonegate, which strikes me as absolutely compatible with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand you do, but this isn't more dense in terms of the yard sizes than those houses are. What we saw tonight in terms of the distance of these houses from the houses that are adjacent to it on Stonegate are about the same distance as the houses on one side of the Stonegate Circle to the houses on the other side of the Stonegate Circle, in terms of backyards to backyards. With the number of houses, with the number of residential units on Stonegate coming out of that street onto Turnpike, I can't figure out why 6 houses entering on a street is a big deal, but however many we've got in Stonegate entering it from a single street,
Please.
100 okay, so why would 6 houses be a hazard, but 168 entering, not a hazard? I just can't.
Well, what's your
My take is, I'm for it. I cannot see where this is incompatible with the use in this neighborhood on that side of Turnpike, BAOD utilization.
Park 4 cars in our driveway.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And they can park 2 in their driveway and 1 in the garage.
Please. This is a slow way to get a straw poll, but this is what we're doing.
This is a slow way to get a straw poll. You know, I understand that the BAOD is not the same kind of use as the other side of Turnpike. It isn't. It is where 2 zones join. It will never be the same where 2 zones join. So I'm for it, bottom line.
Okay. So we've got 2 for, 1 against, 3 undecided, and of course, you notice I've cleverly avoided saying, well, I'm going to say what I think.
We knew you would.
Yep.
Yeah.
I always
You kind of could bet on that.
As a straw poll, subject to conversation we would have in deliberation, I'm generally for it, and I'll explain why. The notion of the COID and the BAOD in this area was indeed to create something of a live, work, play area. Now, that's going to grow up in pieces. I mean, some of the play is, well, I see they're clearing the lot there in the corner. That, what is it? Omni?
Restaurant.
Yeah, for the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's starting. It's slow. It's going to take some years. I know that there is work being done by people in the town associated with the Economic Development Committee as well to get commercial in there, and that is going. It's going slowly, but it's going, and it appears now that it's going to work. Similarly, for residential, there was a residential component to this BAOD design, And it was limited basically to Turnpike Road and along there with the idea that this was a pretty reasonable buffer. And I think what we're seeing here is that concept being played out. For that reason, my initial inclination is to say yes. Now, so it looks like we got 3 yes, 1 no, and 3 maybes, which is not a decision yet, and may take a while to get there. That said, you've heard us all give at least an initial notion of what we're thinking. We will want to close this public hearing probably tonight, but before we do that, I want to give anybody who has an additional comment based on what they've heard to have a chance to come up and say something. Well, please up to the microphone and identify yourself. And again, please try not to repeat the arguments that we've heard. We've heard them and they're good. Yeah.
I live at 37 Stonegate
Right.
Road, and
Okay.
parking is going to be a huge issue.
Right.
We have 3 bedrooms in my house. I moved in there when my kids were all young, and some of them weren't even born yet. I have 6 cars at my house now, 6. And there's quite a few other houses in the area that have the same. You have, like, once you sell these and people move in, how do you control the parking? Like, what are you going to do? Where do you expect people to park? And like you said, you walk through on a weekend. You guys should take a walk through our development sometime on a Saturday or Sunday and see the cars everywhere. Sometimes they're lined up on both sides of the street. What are you going to do? Like, we can accommodate it. This place will not be able to accommodate that. And we don't want them parking in our neighborhood. You know, where are they going to park? Across the street, on Turnpike, in our neighborhood? You got to think about that.
Okay. We are indeed. Thank you very much. Chris?
Chris Bowman, 3 Julia Street, Precinct 4 Rep. I just want to remind the board that there are specific, basic requirements that have to be met in a minimum in an RM district. The first is minimum lot size requirement for multifamily is not less than 80,000 square feet, period. So it doesn't matter how you like the project or don't like the project. It's about whether the project in this location on 31,000 square feet meets the zoning bylaws for an RM district or not. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Chris. Just after the next one.
Michael Cooney again, 69 Stonegate Road. The issue here is density, not houses, density. 26 people can be living on 31,000 square feet. It's a lot of people to put in that tiny lot. It's not about the house, it's about the people that are going to be there. That's a lot of people. 31,000 square feet, 26 people living there. I might go this way, but we're worrying about chickens in town having enough place to spread out. I love chickens, but they want to have 40,000 square feet to have chickens. But you want to put 26 people on a tiny little lot. The quality of life is not going to be what you're thinking it is. But I do like chickens, right?
Okay, well, thank you.
It's about density.
Noted.
Yeah, noted. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. You want, okay. Yeah, why don't we let him.
I'm sorry.
No problem at all. I really want to get everybody heard.
My name is Barry McCulloch. I'm at 52 Stonegate.
Right.
A couple of things I heard tonight, and I just want to mention, we're talking about the density. One of the terms that was used early on in the discussion about the parking was talking about jockeying the cars. There's no jockeying in Stonegate, but using that phrase right there indicates there's some acknowledgement that there might be a little bit of a density and a parking problem there. Secondly, there's a lot of discussion been going on. It started at 15 units and now we're down to 6, and that's a great thing. I'm trying to understand, and I never understood the rationale of looking at that lot and saying 15. A normal person might have looked at that and said 2, 3. We looked at it at 15, now we're down at 6, and that's kudos for the developer. I don't think so. I don't understand how it worked down that way. And it almost seems like that maybe that was calculated, I don't know, to make the 6 look better than the 15. It's just sitting there. And the last thing I want to say, and again, like Mike, my heart's racing, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Thank you.
Well put. Thank you. Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple things I'd like to reiterate about where this project started and where we are. I would like to point out again that that my client bought this project and was already had a preliminary determination for 9-unit development. My client wanted to build something larger, although he did try to build something, work with the abutters and maybe see if there was a variance option to go a different route in the interim. It did not work out. My client really wanted to build a rental apartment building here. He thinks it meets the requirements of the COID better. It fits the floor area ratio. It actually meets the density guidelines. We could build the affordable housing. But after meeting with this board and hearing the abutters' concerns about the 15 units, we decided to try to go forward with a smaller development. Not only did we try to go with a smaller development, we waited for a town meeting warrant to fail, where some representatives had brought a warrant article forward to try to limit the amount of units allowed in a BAOD and CEIOD district. It failed. So then we came back to the board. Why can't we build something smaller? Multifamily housing is not considered separate units in the town of Chelmsford. In the interim, the planning board fixed the zoning bylaw, so we came back with 6. We tried to be responsive to every single concern that's been raised by the board and try to fit the intention of the BAOD and the CEIOD. To Mr. Zaroulis's point, we got a determination. We worked with Mr. DuPal. We tried to work through the zoning bylaws. Are we building 80%, $180,000 affordable units? No, we're building starter homes. Not the only intention of the BEOD and the CEIOD to build affordable housing, it's to build housing. And if we can build affordable housing, you can, but some projects can't. When you go to the intention of the bylaw to the highest potential on this BAOD, the highest potential here is to build starter homes that are in conformance with the neighborhood. We looked around this neighborhood, and I understand statistics, but we did not give you 4 numbers. Okay, we really did do our homework. We looked around, we looked at areas, we looked at density. And let's talk about density for a minute. What is the problem with the density? The problem with the density is the impacts. Okay, so we've heard the impacts are going to be stormwater. We have to deal with that. We understand that. We understand that the other impacts could be noise. We don't think we will be any noisier than any of the other neighbors in this overlay. It's just not possible. And we won't create any other noise than our neighbors would, who are the same residential use. I'd also like to point out to the board that we are using the underlying zoning district, which is RM zoning, which is high density zoning. I actually thought it was comical as I was preparing this application that I actually had to ask for a special permit for multifamily housing in a zoning district, which allows for multifamily housing, but I did. And just to speak quickly about the amount of permits that are required, I think this is actually the least number of permits, relief I've ever needed at any of the CEIOD or BAOD, or actually any of my special permit projects before this board. And for those that don't practice in the town of Chelmsford under zoning, it's because this board doesn't grant waiver relief. In order to get relief, you have to file for special permits for each separate section. It's the way that the zoning is set up. But I'd like to point out again that the special permit relief we're asking here is 1, for a BAOD, CEIOD, 2, for multifamily in a BAOD, which is an actual use. The third one is for building coverage, and we discussed this. We could actually meet building coverage. We can meet it and not have to get any relief from this board. But what does that mean? We're building 3-story buildings with parking underneath. And then those are higher structures. They do not blend into the neighborhood, and we think this is a much better design. The only other relief we need is site plan review. Mr. Haverty has already made the determination that the inclusionary zoning waiver is not special permit relief. It is relief that this board can grant under the section. So I actually think our special permit relief is limited. Yeah. So I would like, for those of you on the fence about where we've come and what this project is, I don't think that you should look at the BAOD and CAOD and say this is bad. We are actually working within the parameters of your zoning. Let's look at parking as one specific, because I've heard a couple board members say that. We actually meet your parking requirements. And we have actually stated that we will deed restrict these units to only have 2 cars. And not only have we done that, we've come back tonight with a proposal to land bank. So that if there is actually a problem, we would have to build them in conformance with your zoning bylaw. So each unit would get another parking space, which is above and beyond your parking requirements. So when I just urge the board, when they look at issues to deny this, think about what the impacts are and what am I not meeting the intent of the bylaw, because I frankly can't see it. I understand the concerns of the abutters. I understand there's a lot of construction on 104 Turnpike, and new construction is never fun. But this is within your zoning bylaws. So I urge those of you on the fence to think about the things that I'm saying to you. Also, I would just like a point of procedure, and I don't know if it's been answered, but I know that there's a couple board members that are actually leaving the board.
Yes, well, potentially. I mean,
Right.
nobody's actually leaving for sure just
Right.
yet.
Yeah, but still.
But you're likely to have something happen.
Right, so it's the intention of the board to close the public hearing this evening and take action? Or to close the public hearing tonight and continue? Because if
yeah.
the intention would be to close the public hearing and not take any vote action, I would actually request to stay open because we have no decision. And it doesn't change the impact if you're not actually gonna take a vote on conditions. If it's the actual inclination of the board to close tonight and to take a vote subject to conditions, I would feel differently.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very
Gotcha.
much.
Gotcha, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion to close the public hearing?
Let me
Briefly, Mr. Chair?
let the attorney have a say.
The last meeting,
Yeah.
I believe you asked for a set of the proposed association documents. I just heard about a two-car deed restriction. Have you seen those documents?
I have seen one, yes.
You have seen proposed?
Yes, it's basically in draft form.
Okay. And does that incorporate a two-car deed restriction?
I have to go take a look and make sure that it does, because I just got it fairly recently, but.
Okay.
But we can verify that. And I take attorney, Melissa at her word.
Not done,
Attorney
sorry.
Robbins.
Mr. Chair, we'll just
Hold
make
it.
this a point of procedure that it's a model.
It's a model.
Include all the rules and regulations.
I understood, I recognize that when I read it.
Yeah, so it doesn't go into the site specific.
Yep.
So Mike Cooney again,
Sit up.
69 Stonegate Road. Little history, the same developer tried to push the same thing through with 6 units to the zoning board of appeals. So that was what he wanted the first thing. That's what he wanted. He told us he wanted that. We said it was too dense. Work with us. No. Well, if you don't do that, we're gonna go with rental property then. He always wanted this. He came to this board rental property only because they pulled it off the zoning board of appeals at the last minute. We paid lawyer fees. We showed up at the meeting and it was pulled off, and they came to your board instead.
Okay.
And that was we were in fear of losing upon appeal.
Gotcha.
That was her words.
All right, thank you. All right.
Give you a motion to close the public hearing?
Do I have a second?
Second.
One more question, please.
No, we're into the thing now, so.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second. Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to give you another motion. A motion to deny the permit or the application as submitted.
May I suggest that if we are going to have a motion, that let's make it in the affirmative, and those who wish to vote against it can do so. I think it's just a little
Isn't
cleaner.
that
in the
kind of
records.
like? All right.
I
do
get
you
your,
wanna-
I understand your point.
Yeah, you want it there, all right, we'll make a motion to approve the,
Okay, but I understood that you're probably not voting for it. Okay, we have a motion.
Do you have a question, Mike?
Well, I just wanted to,
No, I think it's moving really fast. I think we haven't talked about, we haven't had a discussion.
Well, we will have a discussion.
Wait, so you're gonna vote and then have a discussion, or?
We'll,
go ahead. I'm sorry, you go, I'm
we'll,
sorry
we'll
for
go ahead
jumping
and
in.
discuss. And, I mean, if we can have a vote in second,
I mean,
then we can discuss before we vote.
And then have the discussion.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
just
that's-
didn't know where it was going.
I was just gonna take the
and
motion
Henry's
and then
reading
I
my
was gonna-
mind, and I just have,
Yeah.
okay,
I think
sorry.
we're just going backwards about it, but that's just me, but.
There are many ways to do it.
All right, well,
Did we get
You
a
have a-
second?
Second, he needs a second. too.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now, we are in deliberation. Let us deliberate.
Okay.
And I think what I'll do is take it around. Get everybody have their say, and then we can let it develop. You want to start, Nance?
Well, I guess I said quite a bit before. I'm not seeing where it is higher proximity to each other than is in common use in Stonegate. I'm not seeing where these buildings are closer to the Stonegate properties than the Stonegate properties are to each other. I would, by all means, want to see a limitation on the number of vehicles in the condominium rules, because I believe that that is going to be an issue here. You simply can't have 6 vehicles for one of these properties. But having lived in a condominium property and lived with the rules of a condominium property, that kind of a rule doesn't strike me as odd at all. They tend to regulate a lot more things than how many vehicles you can have. I don't see any reason that these properties would create more noise in the neighborhood than the adjacent multifamily uses in the neighborhood. I certainly don't see where this driveway is, the volume of traffic coming from this driveway is more of a problem than the volume of traffic coming from the Stonegate property. What I do see is the fear of residents, which is understandable and is honestly pretty typical from a percentage of people, of anything that represents change in their area. And I appreciate the energy that all these folks bring to the table to try to abate those fears. When we created the BAOD zone, we were promoting volumes of housing in this area to support volumes of jobs in this area. And you can't get volumes of housing without higher density than we would in Chelmsford have in our residential neighborhoods, our single-family residential neighborhoods. So from my standpoint, I expected that housing in the BAOD would be high-density housing. We allowed housing anywhere and everywhere in the BAOD, but we set aside Turnpike for only an alternate use of multifamily housing. So multifamily housing could occur anywhere, including down on 129 itself. But commercial uses are restricted from being applied on the Turnpike Road area of the industrial area of the BAOD area in order to respect the single-family housing community that is adjacent to this zone. So I think we have to remember that when we talk about compatibility of neighborhoods, compatibility within a neighborhood, that any place that we have a perimeter of one zone against another, we cannot expect that what is developed in the target zone will be the same thing that would be applied in the adjacent zone. They're different. They're very, very different, particularly when you have an industrial zone up against a single-family residential. But the fact is that if we look at the the last sale date of the properties along the south side of Turnpike Road, 85 to 90% of the people that live on that road bought their houses after the industrial zone was created. They knowingly purchased property against an industrial zone.
No.
All I can say is what's in the assessor's database. Again. These folks came to us with plans. We asked them to change those plans. They have changed the plans in the ways that we requested several times. They've put an incredible amount of investment into the engineering work to meet the things that we asked for. I guess I'd ask you all to consider that as you look at making your decision on this property.
All right, thanks. Mike?
Is there a letter from the fire department?
Way back in the midst of time.
So they approved that?
Yeah, it's been through, it's got all the appropriate letters.
I mentioned before regarding, there's just a few issues, and I know there's 6 of the special permits. I think the purpose intent of the BAOD that they're looking for, this doesn't meet that intent. There's only 2 items on this letter. There's facts here. 195, 143D, and E are the only 2 that this property would apply to, and it doesn't meet it, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, that's not the groups, but that's just my opinion. And I think we should look at the special permits by each one and go down and look at them and say, does it grant it or not? And I know you're gonna approve that after. But I think, she only mentioned a couple of them. She mentioned 4 of them, and she missed the 2. And then the inclusionary housing. It was one of my first meetings here where it was $5,000 approved. How did we come to that, you guys come to that, when there's 3 bedrooms in each one of these? And it should be 200,000 if we hold them up to other developments that we have done in town. So I don't know where the 5,000 came from. I was here, I approved it, so I'll go on record that I approved it, but I had no idea, that was one of my first nights here. So I'll just go on record with that. That's fine, if that's what you guys think, but I just think you do for one, you do for the other. And I don't understand where that 5,000
Let me comment a little bit on that piece. We did have some testimony before us discussing conversations that had taken place, I believe, with the housing authority. I don't know, Evan, could you fill that in a little bit? Because it was considered.
This was purely driven by the planning board. When the planning board initially, you have to remember, this project came to the planning board and it was approved for a 9-unit. At the time, the planning board was coming off of Grist Mill. And my understanding is that the planning board received some feedback from the community related to the reduced payment in lieu of on Grist Mill. And I think there were members of the planning board who didn't feel great about that reduction. So this project was the next one in line. It appeared to me that the planning board at the time prioritized making sure that the next project, which was this one, complied. Either build the affordable units or do 100% payment in lieu of. The applicant said, sure, we can do that. We need 9 units. The board granted applicability. So it's all about timing and what the board's priorities are at that particular time. The COID and the BAOD allow flexibility based upon specific timing and specifics as it relates to each individual project within the neighborhood. So they had the 9-unit, then it got sold. The new applicant, the new property owner shows up, makes the determination that the 9-unit isn't a good model for them. They propose the 15-unit apartment building. Many board members here initially viewed it positively, thought it fit very nicely into the Bayard goals and objectives. Then I think what happened was word got out, more people started attending the planning board meetings associated with this project, which brings us to where we are now. The planning board, as you heard members say, once the 15-unit project was being transitioned out, the planning board expressed a desire to this particular applicant to come up with something different. And that's where you heard Melissa Robbins talk about the planning board bringing an article to town meeting to allow this flexibility, to allow detached single-family in an RM zone. As it pertains to the inclusionary, because the planning board on this particular case was trying to reduce the number of units and trying to prioritize compatibility over production or over rental housing, that's what's driving prioritizing the number of units over inclusionary. We know for a fact that someone can build a project of 9 units and pay inclusionary. But over the evolution of the project, with the board working with the neighborhood, the board has made a determination that less is better for this particular site.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree, Evan. That is how we got here. Yeah. I mean, it was basically
The
a
final
decision
piece,
between.
the final piece of that is that the inclusionary bylaw requires the planning board to get input from the Chelmsford Housing Authority and the Housing Advisory Board prior to taking any official vote on reducing a PILO. David Hedison did submit a very brief email indicating, to this board, indicating that he had met and reviewed the pro forma, and that based upon his review, this project, based upon its pro forma and primarily its density, can't afford to carry affordable units or a payment in lieu of.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not necessarily a surprise, but that's the methodology and kind of how this evolved.
Yep, that's as I recall it.
I put my hand up and says we can't do it for nothing, we gotta get something.
Yeah.
And so we got 5.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, which is
So then it's just
somewhat
that
token.
question I have. And
It was basically a trade-off between 9 units and.
It's a pure balancing act.
Yeah.
Based upon the planning
for
board priorities.
updating me on that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I honestly think it's a nice design.
Yeah.
I just think it's over density. There's
Okay.
too much density. If they went down to 3, if they went down and matched the density of Stonegate right behind it, with the I don't think there'd be an issue.
Okay.
That's my take. I'm all set.
Could I?
Oh, wait a minute, let's go around.
I think, like just discussing, going over it, going back and forth, I would probably move forward with it because we went back and forth so much about it. And honestly, the design really does fit the area. I know you can argue that it doesn't, but it truly does. If you take a look at Stonegate, if you walk through and you look in here, they don't have the parking that you guys have, there's no doubt about it. But they did do what we asked. And, versus 9 townhouses, I would rather see this. I think this fits the neighborhood better. And I think that Stonegate should have actually maybe worked with them a little bit more and maybe come up with something better. Well, bottom line is that actually looks better to me, in my opinion, than the 9 townhouses.
Yeah,
So
okay. Thanks, Tim.
that's what I got.
Go ahead, Henry.
Maybe I can throw a lifeline to this whole thing.
Yeah, please.
I look at this development, I think a lot like my father's is in Florida. I think this would be a heck of a lot easier sale if it came underneath like a 40R, basically a age-restricted development that you could build in a little bit extra income over the lifetime of it, where you could take and people need services, and they're 65 or over or something like that. We're getting feedback from the housing authority that we're looking for stuff like that in town.
Right.
I could see that density. I could see the $5,000 going away. If we could do that, because we were trying to look for affordable for older people. I don't think that's, it's never been on the table. I think that would probably eliminate some of the issues that people have with noise and stuff like that, because retired people don't make a lot of noise. There's not a lot of car issues.
Been to Mike's party.
The other couple of things that we had seen that we were talking about here is underneath the CRID, they're also talking about interior sidewalks, which we're not showing. The stormwater thing is a big thing now. We really need to have it on the plan. I know they can say they have, they're gonna do it, but it has to be there somehow. I'm almost wondering whether we withdraw it, give everybody a couple weeks to think about it, and go from there. I think you'd stand a better chance of passing it, but that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Just while it's fresh in my memory, I believe this had a design with an option of a first floor master. Does anyone recall that?
I don't know if that's on the design
So-
that's here now.
So I believe it is designed for first floor living. We could probably, to Henry's preference on age restricted, in lieu of a deed restriction, could potentially have a condition that articulates that it's initially marketed as first floor living. If a certain period of time goes by, then obviously you'd have to let that go. Trying to think of a way that we can create a
All I'm
condition
doing is throwing lead balloons out there to see what
yeah, and
happens, see
that's,
what
I mean,
floats, you
again,
know?
I'm trying to see if that's, because I agree with you. I mean, if you have more seniors, then you may have less parking and other less
schools.
intensity.
And we have Hedison pushing us that way too. He's
Yeah,
looking
so
for that
it
stuff.
makes sense. So I'm trying to float out the notion that if that's something as you suggest, makes sense for the board, we could likely come up with a condition that creates some preference for marketing and trying to get them to
Good idea.
sell it in that form.
Well, after going over and looking at it, and looking at the parking, and hearing the feedback from everybody, that's kind of where I'm kind of stuck on the fence, or off the fence now, as far as, I don't think it's a good fit. I think it's gonna be too dense for that area. Not for the area per se, but for that one little lot. The 30,000 square foot lot is tiny. There's guys building duplexes on 30,000, 20,000 square foot lot, and they're selling for $5 1/4 a side. How much money do you gotta make off a project? Not that that has anything to do with it, because it's not our business to say that, but it's just too much in my eyes.
Okay.
My position hasn't changed.
Know what that is. Well, my position hasn't changed either. Let me ask you a question. We're gonna need 5 votes on this?
Correct.
We're gonna need 5. It looks to me as if we've got potentially 4. I can bring it to a vote.
Henry made a good suggestion.
Bringing it back in a couple of weeks, letting them.
Well, that's gonna be a new board, or it could potentially be.
Yeah, you could,
And
you have the potential of having multiple non-voting members at that point.
You have a potential of losing now too.
Yeah, I understand.
So as part of your deliberation, I did provide you a handout with some suggested.
Yes.
So for what it's worth, again, I think Henry brought up something that could be worked into a condition for those that are on the fence. If you're able to articulate some specific concerns, maybe we can brainstorm ways to.
Who enforces those conditions?
Well, it's directly is through the building commissioner.
Yeah.
However, any planning board member, any resident of the development or an abutter can file a report suggesting or claiming that it needs enforcement.
No, but if there was a suggestion about going to elderly first and seeing if they would buy, who enforces that?
So that's an interesting one because it's not physical. It's not something that's being built. We'd have to work that out. I'm not suggesting that that's a common condition. It's something that the board, myself, working with town council, and potentially the attorney for the developer would work out. The board would approve the final language. So you would wordsmith it based upon input received from other professionals. You know, it could be something similar to other items where, for stormwater, applicants are required to submit reports. For affordable housing, applicants are required to submit reports. So it could be something, you know, along those lines, where logs are submitted, you know, indicating who's looked at the property, who's made offers. It's not my area of expertise. I know there's a couple kind of, you know, realtors on the board, just, you know, throwing out ideas.
There's a point of order. Can we take a 5-minute break? So this is a brand-new thing that they want to
Yes,
discuss.
yeah, I think that makes sense, and it being 9:30, I bet they're not the only people that could use a break.
Yeah, I gotta go.
And then if we just,
All right.
and just a point, we'd have to come back and reopen the public hearing to hear what they've decided.
Well, if they come up with something that they can request a reopening, and we can look at it at that
Mr. Chair,
point.
another point of order. I believe there's a live motion pending. There was a motion
There
in the
is,
second.
and we're still suspended. That can always be withdrawn.
Okay.
And that may very well be what happens procedurally.
Okay.
But good point. Yeah.
Sorry.
Just agree on certain things.
No, that's okay.
Yes, the legalists don't think that,
No.
in my opinion, I don't think
Not a bad
that what you
suggestion.
guys decided, I've just put this is not what you
Getting sweaty?
And we expect it to be high density.
I'll,
We need to
Hear from the
reopen the
Huh?
public hearing.
yeah, we need to reopen.
I'll give you a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion
Favor.
second in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would just ask for a motion for reconsideration of the motion on the floor to actually vote
Yep.
in favor of the project so that we can have a vote to reopen the public hearing so that the applicant
Right.
can offer new information.
We will do just that. Can we have a?
We gotta close it again now that we
No,
opened it?
withdrawal of the motion to vote.
Withdraw the motion to vote.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to withdraw the motion to vote.
Okay, in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we are technically now procedurally okay.
Now we can reopen the
Yep.
public meeting.
I'll give you a motion to open the public meeting.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
we are back in public hearing, and procedurally, I believe we're okay.
So, Mr. Chair, after hearing the board's consideration, we would like to offer that we could market these units 55 and over for the first 45 days of marketing for all first floor living areas to applicants that are only 55 and over.
45 days. Okay. Understood.
All the units?
All the units.
All the units, all 6.
Don?
And then we'll keep that marketing open for 45 days, and if we get eligible purchasers, we will sell to them, and if not, we will go on without the 55 and
Okay.
over requirement.
Very good. Well, hold it. This is now public. It's open, so if you want to get up and say something. Anybody from the public? Yeah. Hi, Chris. Welcome back again.
Chris Bowman, 3 Julia Street, Precinct 4 Rep. It doesn't matter what age this project is in an RM district. The minimum lot size requirement is no less than 80,000 square feet. What is happening here is adjusting everything to make it more palatable for the residents so they won't object to it. But the main question is still there. Does it meet the zoning bylaws for an RM district or does it not? And it does not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to comment here on that, which is we have an opinion that says that, and however the vote might go, that this is within the bylaws of the town of Chelmsford. Now, that can obviously be debated, and there are standard ways to debate that. But that is the opinion that we have from town council. Would somebody else like to speak? Yeah.
Sir, about a few years ago, when I read about this whole business area development, any sane person would think we are talking about making sure that the businesses on 129 are fully occupied. There's vibrancy in the neighborhood with good restaurants, nice buildings and all. I or anyone would think you're talking about making sure, working with the owners and revitalizing their the facades of the houses so that it looks nice, so that the neighbors think that they are in a good neighborhood, the commercial neighborhood. You revitalize that way. The way to revitalize that business district is making sure that businesses want to do business there, or the employees of businesses want to work there. I mean, I have a resident here who works for Cadence, and they are thinking of moving out. Why? Because young people don't want to come. Why? Because did anyone here look at the traffic on Golden Cove Road in the mornings? If you guys are serious about revitalizing that district, think about those things. The traffic problem, no restaurants, which is what young people look at, things like that. Don't give in to these builders who are just trying to make money.
If I may, could we keep it to this particular project? I understand your point, but let's keep it to this particular application that's before us right now.
My point is that this project is basically looking at every corner where they can cut, interpret the laws in any which way they want, and go ahead. If they want, they can go build a multi-million-dollar house, and then make their money. If the laws are interpreted directly, I know my colleague here on the Stonegate board said, well, we'll let them allow 2. I would say no. I would allow only 1 and only on the footprint of the current house. That's it.
Thank you. You've been heard.
Just briefly on the proposal for
Yeah.
a 45-day
Yep.
marketing restriction. That's not an affordability restriction.
Mhm.
First of all,
It certainly isn't, yeah.
45 days is a very limited time. It would have no impact on subsequent sales, so there'd be no guarantee that down the line those units would not become the 4-family, 4-car, structures that the residents are concerned about. Also, I mean, I think 45 days to sell these units is probably optimistic, even in a hot market like today. So I think that that's just not enough time.
Okay.
And it's not affordable restriction.
That certainly is true. Thank you. Something new, I hope?
Michael Cooney again, 69 Stonegate Road. This is going to affect not just this property. We got the property next door is next. Go next door and buy that property. He offered them money for that property already to put in more houses on it. She didn't get what she wanted, which I understand that, but it's available. We have to be thinking about the future of our area. The next house over, it's gone. If you pass this, every single little house in that area, builders are going to go in and buy it and do the same thing. This is going to affect more people on Stonegate Road. We're going to be back here next time with the property next door.
Thanks.
It's not just this lot, it's the future. It's going to be North Chelmsford. Every place else that is in this BOD that has a small property are going to be able to go in and buy what's there and redevelop it. We're supposed to utilize what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. A new face.
Good evening. My name is Sue Johnson, and I own the property at 154 Turnpike Road. It is also zoned RM. And just to make it clear to everybody in the room, I have no plans on selling my property at this point. I'd like to also point out that I have 5 Stonegate abutters on my back lot, and the property next door that is the development is only proposing 3 on the side lot. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Motion to close again?
I think that's what we're going to have to
Give you a
do.
motion to close the public hearing again.
Again. Second.
Second. Again.
Motion, second, in favor? Aye. Okay.
I'll give you a motion to do your
Oh, very good. Yep.
motion for approve the project.
Okay.
I'll give you the second, and then we
Okay,
can.
we have a motion and a second, and we are now going to do some deliberation. We can run it around one more time. If anybody has an additional comment, otherwise we're going to take it to a vote. Yes?
I think Susan's comment was applicable, that for her property lines, the density of the housing in Stonegate is 60% higher than the density of the proposal for her left-hand property side. In other words, I'm back to the argument that this is a consistent proximity of housing to the area.
Okay, thanks.
Well, me? All right.
You want to, well, I will let, at this point, because I think a lot of people have talked themselves out.
Yeah.
I will let anybody who does want to talk.
You think I like talking, huh? All right.
I know.
The 55 is good. I'd rather see 60 days instead of 45, and I think in the realm of building units, especially where I've worked on projects before, you're going to have one coming every month or every other month coming up for market. 60 days, and they have my vote.
How do you enforce that?
Building inspector.
Building
From the
inspector.
time
That's his job.
he's gonna take
So
he's gonna
so you get one couple. I'm sorry.
he's gonna take and give them a final occupancy, and he's gonna want to see a for sale sign out in the front, and from 60 days from that, they'll have time to move it. That's how I'm looking at it, unless they're gonna try to pre-sell them, which would be interesting. I don't know how you'd have to do
There's
that.
nothing preventing the board of placing a condition.
Right.
Requesting or requiring the applicant to provide a proposal back to the board. You lay out the framework, 55 plus for 60 days upon completion of first available model. And then you ask them, as part of the condition, to come back to you with a proposal as to how the details are gonna be worked out.
Yeah.
I think it's just very convoluted, and I think everyone's just trying to get an approval here, so my vote is no, and go ahead and vote. I mean,
Yeah.
and let's get to the table.
That's
I don't
what
know
we
how you're
want.
gonna enforce the 45 days or 65 days. It's just going to be, they're gonna wait 65 days and get,
I don't think there's any way possible to make that happen. You could say you're putting it up for sale and drag it out for 60 days.
Well, I mean, if they're getting the money, they're getting the money no matter
Yeah.
what.
No, I agree.
really
And-
don't think
Yeah.
Please.
Well, it's gonna have to take and
Yeah.
come in, and I think when they take and bring us to us, let's do the same thing again, 60 days when it resales afterwards.
Okay.
I think that's,
All right.
My mind's made up.
Okay. I think most minds are getting close to made up. Any more further comments? If not, I think
Yeah.
we need to take this to a vote.
I have a question for
Yes.
Don, because he deals with real estate. Given the expectations of the market for the next year or two, I think anything looking out farther than that is magic balls, but, mystic
Anything
balls.
looking past, tomorrow.
Yeah, it's possible too. I mean, we all know that things can crash. But within our current expectations, what's the average turnaround time on something this size for new housing?
Well, it's certainly well within the 60 days, absolutely. And Tim, I believe you can probably confirm that. To the advantage of the buyer in the current moment and the expectation of the Fed going forward, and the number of rate increases they're expecting this year is nominal. So I think it will be good for sellers for this season and probably going into possibly next year, a
Even
couple
into
quarters
next
of next
spring.
year as well.
Yeah. Okay, that gives us a good idea. Okay, are we
Ready?
at the moment? Going once?
We're gonna, with what Henry stated for terms?
Yeah, we would,
55 plus 60 days,
60 days, 55 plus.
first model.
First model.
And limited number of vehicles?
Okay, now before we actually vote this, are there any other conditions that we haven't already discussed?
we gotta have the stormwater.
Yeah, the usual, it's a standard.
It's our town council's recommendation because of the unique
Yeah.
transition that may occur.
Yeah,
He had recommended that if the board is going to consider a vote to approve, that the list of conditions be available and voted on as part of that motion.
yes, that's exactly
That's-
where I was
that's
going.
what- That was what I was attempting to do here.
Pretty good job, actually.
I think most of them are self-explanatory. One is the inclusionary. That's been talked
Yeah.
about this evening.
Well, if we're taking in, we're
you
taking
taking
that
it-
away if we're
oh.
doing the,
No, we can,
well,
we can still leave it in.
well, whatever, we gotta take a vote on it.
Yeah, we can take a vote on it, yeah.
Take a vote on it, whatever you
So
wanna do.
that's in there. The water district letter is in there.
Yep,
Um,
the no parking requirements in there
yeah,
on Turnpike.
I don't have a full. And then the fire department letter's in there, and then there are 12 special conditions, some of which we've discussed this evening. Number one is that they're gonna build the sidewalk. If for some reason they don't build the sidewalk, they're paying the $75 per linear square feet. Number two contemplated that if the sidewalk was built, that the stone wall is likely going away. If for some reason that the sidewalk is not built prior to last occupancy, then they're providing the easement. Number four, existing tree line to be preserved along side and rear lot lines shall be clearly marked in the field prior to any land
yeah, I see what you
disturbance.
That's not on my plan. That's
Has anybody noticed that we are missing page 2?
You're missing page 2.
We'd better go get page 2.
You want me to read them, or do you want a copy of them?
Why don't you read them? I think they're
Yeah. Number 6, the proposed 6-foot stockade fence along the rear lot line shall not result in removal of significant mature trees or vegetation, per number 4, which is preservation of the tree line. The fence shall be installed to avoid removal of existing trees to the maximum extent practicable. The proposed, I had one in here that the pocket park, we may want to relocate it to the left side. But that's not.
Depends on the stormwater management.
Yeah, I don't know
thing,
if
that's
it's.
gonna be-
that's going to determine it.
All trash and recycling is the responsibility of the developer and subsequent owners. The town shall not have the responsibility of trash removal and recycling. Number 8, prior to first occupancy permit, a $1,400 53G traffic mitigation contribution shall be made based upon the construction of 14 new parking spaces. Number 9, all proposed signage shall be reviewed and approved by the planning board. Number 10 speaks to the plan showing up to 6 parking spaces to be land banked, and in accordance with section 195-18, as the attorney indicated, from the date of issuance of last occupancy, the building inspector and/or the planning board can make a determination that those land bank spaces need to be constructed. Number 11, all required legal documents, including the condominium association, shall be reviewed and approved by town council prior to first occupancy permit. Number 12, no parking on Turnpike Road. And number 13,
So each building has
the homeowner's condominium
plus
master deed shall include a deed restriction, no more than 2 parking spaces per unit.
Okay.
And number 14
no more
would be
than
the
2 vehicles
55.
per unit.
Yes, no more than 2 vehicles. And number 14 is the newest one related to the 55+ for 60 days, marketing upon model being available.
Very good.
Evan,
Okay.
since I don't have page 2, where is approval by the town engineer on the drainage system?
So that's a boilerplate condition.
I
That's
know,
not a
but I'd
special
like
condition.
to, because it's not on this plan and we
Now,
don't.
remember, one of the
I
boilerplate
know.
conditions is final plans. So
Yeah.
the final plans are endorsed by you
Right.
prior to
Yeah,
them being
you're right.
endorsed. They revise
Yeah, you're right.
the engineering details per the town engineer's memo.
Absolutely, there's no problem with that. Right.
Just to be clear, my concern, as I raised to applicant's counsel, is that a temporary restriction on age, I think, would be in violation of federal law. To discriminate on housing if you have
Yes.
permanent restrictions under HOPA, but I think a temporary restriction would violate those federal
Yeah,
restrictions.
I'm aware that there's some question in that space, and we would definitely need town council's approval. If not, we would have to strike that.
We'd have to come back for another vote at that point.
We could either come back for another vote, or we could simply say that, I think what makes more sense is
As
to.
allowed by law?
As allowed
As
by
allowed
law.
by law.
Right.
Well, town council may take and give us a couple different options too.
That's right.
I don't think he will on this. I think it's gonna be yes, no.
I mean, just to be clear, I think Henry's initial preference for seniors was generally there's less activity.
Yeah.
The parking is compliant.
Yeah.
So while in theory, seniors may result in less parking, the project as proposed complies with parking.
No, I understand. I understand. That wasn't my concern.
All right. One last chance. Okay. And I think it's time to bring this to a vote.
All right.
They're playing in.
All in, did you have a?
Do we have a motion on the table?
Yes, we have a motion on the table. We moved and seconded it before we deliberated, which is legit.
And that motion is incorporating all of these.
Yeah, it would be,
Conditions.
the motion is
And you'll-
approval with incorporation of all of the
And
conditions
you'll
that
have
we've
a
discussed.
final decision for review and
Right,
ratification
but
at your next meeting.
that'll be, just basically ratifying the written copy. But this, what we're about to do now here is to vote on the approval of the project. Okay, everybody clear? All in favor?
Aye.
5.
5. Opposed?
Aye.
2. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And
All right, we got one more.
Next on the agenda. Why is
Okay.
this so? It's really loud.
thanks, man. Thank you. I hated to make everybody vote on that.
I would imagine they're gonna appeal it in.
Yeah, probably, you know it. And we'll find out what the, we're gonna learn a lot about what Bayard COID really means. Which will be handy, because that's the only way we're ever gonna find out.
I think Evan turned them on. Legal opinion on
Evan, you turn the ACs on?
You know, a binding.
It's not the AC, it's just cooler
Okay.
air.
Oh.
Cooler air.
Yeah, the AC
All right.
goes on, it's either on or off. There's no in between.
It's in heat mode right now.
Everybody take a
Want it?
deep breath.
There is no.
We got one more thing on.
We
the
have
board.
one more. This is administrative review of 278 to 282 Mill Road. And you've been very patient. Thank you.
We also got bumped, so we apologize for the wait.
It happens. So for the record, Brian Goodrow with Hancock Associates. So we're here before you tonight seeking a positive finding of applicability for the CEIOD and Business Amenity Overlay District for 278 and 282 Mill Road. If you recall, we were before this board in the fall giving kind of an outline of the proposed project to potentially have this property rezoned at town meeting to be able to fall into the overlay district. That was successful, which is why we're here before you today. So if you look at the plan that we have submitted, it's substantially similar to what we represented previously. It's situated next to Princeton Properties, Millen 3 to the left, and then Analog Devices to the right. Generally speaking, the site slopes from rear lot line to the front yard at Mill Road. There's about a 26-foot elevation differential from Mill Road to the back of the property. So the reason why this specific layout was chosen, and if you look at Millen 3, the reason why that was chosen was to be able to kind of limit our cuts and our fills, to reduce the amount of wall that we're going to be constructing, and to be able to get the building at an elevation towards the rear of the project, which is why the building is located towards the back, with parking in the front. Now, this particular parcel was successfully permitted back in 2006 for a 10,000 square foot building in the traditional IA zoning. And that building was situated in the middle of the site with parking on all 4 sides. Back in 2015, this was permitted again as an office/warehouse building, and site work began to be constructed. And then as more pricing came in, it was determined that ultimately was kind of an uneconomic project for that specific project proponent. So we're here today with a 5,400 square foot building with an associated restaurant and retail use. There's 60 parking spaces on site proposed, and sidewalks are proposed from the building down to Mill Road, and then to connect to the new crosswalk that's actually in front of the abutting property. So this is just a preliminary finding of applicability, and we will be seeking that, but we also, should a positive finding be issued, we also want to get the board's kind of ideas on specific waivers. the project that you see before you really has two primary waivers. One with the parking layout, the way that it's situated right now, at the frontage of Mill Road and the building at the rear, and then yard setbacks. We're seeking to reduce yards down to the CEIOD setbacks by special permit, and that is all kind of necessitated by topography, lot shape, and just how we can lay out this particular site. You know, with that said, I'm here and happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Anybody want to be first?
I'm still trying to download some stuff to see some more plans.
Okay.
I'll
Well,
jump in.
go ahead.
I think it looks like a good project. It's a good location for it. I think it's gonna fit right in with what we're trying to do there.
Okay. Well, I would agree. This certainly falls within the intent of the Bayard and the CEOID. I would note that with the plan that you have there to put a lot of parking up near the front of the lot on Mill Road, and I see you have marked in there, at least in your preliminary diagram, a fair bit of landscaping right along the road. I think we would expect a fairly good chunk of landscaping there, you know, if parking's going to be that close. Other than that, what did you say? Is it 5,200 square feet, something like that?
5,400.
5,400 square feet, and you anticipate, what, restaurant and
retail right now.
Restaurant and retail. What do you think? It comes to two.
So we're showing a 3,000 square foot restaurant and two 1,200 square foot retails.
Okay. Does any? It's way too early, I suppose, to talk about second floors and things like that. But
it's one story, so no
okay.
second floor.
You'd have to put parking underneath to get.
Yeah, to get any higher than that. Okay. I mean, from the perspective of a Bayard CEOID preliminary approval, I think that's all I would need to know.
I'm good with the plan.
No.
I would like to see the building actually a little closer to Mill Road if possible.
Yeah, it is a little bit packed into the backside there.
What I was going to say is, you've heard it before. COID, we're looking for improved architecture. We're looking for a really nice project. Dan's going to be looking for some landscaping.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to it can't be.
Yeah.
A asphalt, field and a building. You gotta, yeah.
Right.
Yes, this is what we're looking for there, but you don't have enough here for us to take and say much or anything about it because, take our notes. You're looking at a field of pavement in front of the building.
Brian, can you talk about any?
Is that on two different levels?
Did you look at other layouts?
Yeah, so essentially it's two-tiered, if you will. So there's a retaining wall along the right-of-way. There's a retaining wall in between kind of the two parking areas, and then there's a third tier of retaining wall back behind the building. And this is all topography driven. It's 26 feet of elevation change, so that's quite a bit to overcome. So in looking at the site, we evaluated it a number of different ways. Obviously, we had two approved projects previously. They all had the same kind of site constraints that were associated with this. They all had walls. They all had, multi-level parking. We looked at putting the building up front and then parking in the rear. And we couldn't, when you flip the site the other way around, you're not gaining the elevation that you need to come up into the site. If you look at, Mill and 3 right next door, there's the long driveway that serpentines up the hill. We need to do something similar to that to be able to make the site work reasonable,
okay.
Essentially.
One additional note, given that you're talking about parking on two levels, I think that if it were to come back to us as a formal project with a full set of plans, what I said about landscaping along the front, along Mill Road, would probably also apply to some degree at the edge of that second raised parking area, and for the same reasons, because now you're going to have cars up in the air and maybe more visible than we might want to see them from Mill.
We can certainly look at
Okay,
that.
but that's all I have for comments. I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine. I think it's what we want. We just got to make sure that we see some plans and see exactly what we're looking at, because right now we're just looking at something that's just.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is, sounds like a couple of members would like to see.
Yeah.
Kind of an alternative layout, either building on the side or up front. But in lieu of that, I think what you're hearing Henry say is, if you're gonna put the parking in front, which is what the COID prefers not to have, high-quality architecture.
Some renderings.
Definitely, if you're gonna have a restaurant, I think the COID basically demands an outdoor seating, outdoor gathering area, enhanced connectivity. You're trying to bring that building as inviting as close to the street as possible to encourage walkability.
Yeah, very well put. Very well put. Okay. Anybody have an additional comment? If not, I could always take a motion to.
Yeah,
Yep.
I do have some comments. So one of the things that the COI does encourage is parking in the back, which keeps both the building close to the street with enhanced architecture and walkability, sidewalks, bicycle racks, green spaces. I'm concerned that this is a sea of asphalt. And, you know, I was pretty serious when I asked about parking underneath the building, because somehow you really do need to deal with the sea of asphalt on this property. The other thing I'm concerned
stormwater
about
too.
is,
Stormwater too, you gotta, yeah.
Stormwater's gonna be a challenge on this, and I mean, you know what it's gonna take to deal with the stormwater because of these slopes. But Brian brought up an interesting comment about the adjacent property, and that is the ability to get a wheelchair up on that sidewalk. And that's also going to be one of your challenges, to be able to climb that distance with an appropriate slope. I don't know what your adjacent pathways are to analog devices, but the entire BAOD encourages green pathways around the park, and the ability of workers from adjacent properties and nearby properties to be able to walk to these services. The walkability on Mill Road is rather precarious, so by all means take your sidewalks into consideration and your adjacent sidewalks into consideration.
Beware 53G too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're creating parking spots.
I am.
Yeah, because you are creating a lot of parking spaces. I would think that there would be opportunities on this site to do parking under and get more utilization out of the property with additional stories. Just because of the nature of the site, because of where it fits, it is down near the mouth of Mill Road, so this is not far off the highway. It's you know, basically within that highway access radius. From the standpoint of putting in a restaurant, this should be a very viable location, but access, both walking and parking are going to be issues. Mike mentioned that I get picky about landscaping, and I really do.
I think that was me.
That was Henry.
Oh, Henry mentioned that I get really picky about landscaping, and I do. One of the specific goals of BAOD is to create more green space in that area. And, oh, by the way, don't even think about putting oak trees over top of parking.
Acorns don't mix.
Just fair warning, because you'll go back and change it. And particularly with this kind of a parking lot, that's an issue.
Yep,
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah, I hate those pits.
All roll down to the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it?
There you go.
I got a question.
Yeah, Hank.
I like the project, it's a great start, and that's what the overlay is all about. What is the elevation from the first parking lot to the second one? Because I don't have the, roughly how high up is it?
I want to say that's a 6-foot wall.
6 foot, so you'll have to have some type of bumper system so the cars don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be a guardrail
Yeah,
on the
but
top there.
now, that's leading to my next question. Is the building that much higher than the middle parking area?
No, it's relatively
Same?
flat, yeah.
So technically, you could put the building where the middle parking area is and have, I'm just asking if
Parking
that
in the
would be
back?
easier for you. That way it would be up front a little bit. It's on the same level as the middle parking lot.
Yeah, we can certainly look at
Just to
that.
throw it out there.
It gives you more distance to climb in.
Then they could, the outside heating could be on the roof too.
Yeah.
Well,
You guys are
yeah,
really
right. Right.
Yeah.
Then we're
Well,
gonna make it
good.
rotate too, right?
No.
No, okay. I mean, I think from the point of view of granting Bayard COID applicability, I think we have plenty here. If everybody else agrees, I would accept a motion
Motion to endorse,
to make a determination of applicability.
make a determination of applicability.
Second.
A positive determination
Yes.
of applicability of this general plan to the BAOD on the
COID.
129 area.
Any further comments? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. New business. Now, this is probably something that only people on the planning board will truly appreciate. But after years of noise, we have a new zoning map.
Really?
We have a new, I have seen it, and if you'd care to present it, it is a thing of true beauty.
Who did the double check the review of it?
I did it all, though. I'm kidding.
No.
Don't you even tell me that.
So while Colleen is exhibiting it, this.
Can you stroll back and forth, Colin?
Yeah.
So I,
It'll show the audience as well. This is,
I mean, if it was on something stiff, I would leave it up here.
yeah.
It is.
you
It's
should have received this via PDF in the
Wow.
in your
I know,
packet.
it's in there.
Yeah.
It's
I
in
saw
there?
it.
Did you come check already?
I saw it on
Wow.
the document we got.
In all seriousness, we've been hoping to have this
Correct.
for a couple of years, and here it is finally.
So
When
the
is it going on the website?
it's already on the GIS. It's already on the GIS. So the zoning bylaw simply requires that the chair, that the zoning, official zoning map is endorsed by the chair and stamped by the town clerk. I figured since there's been a lot of discussion about the zoning map, it is planning board business, I thought it made sense to have it as an official agenda item.
Yep, I think thank you very much.
For purposes of kind of, ceremonial, taking an official vote of the full
Yes.
planning board to have the chair formally endorse it on behalf of the planning board, is the vote that I would look for this evening. The two primary updates is obviously near Route 40, and then the inclusion of the two overlays, the BAOD as well as the CEIOD per town meeting votes. This vote that you're taking this evening is not to make any changes to the map. It's an administrative item to update the map based upon recent town meeting amendments.
Okay. Who feels like
You want a motion to, what do we do here? Endorse?
No, I want to ask a question.
Oh, you do? You have a question?
Who?
We can make
Evan?
Yeah.
This map is not showing the 129 overlay on top of the RM.
Correct.
Why?
So, can you bring up the other map, Colleen? The one that I asked you to?
Oh, yeah.
So, within the BAOD, COID is applied. However, COID does not apply to RM zoning districts. So, if you look at the original BAOD map, the zoning map mirrors what town meeting voted per the map right there. But COID in and of itself, outside of the BAOD, doesn't generally apply to RM.
Yeah.
Right.
So, a decision was made. You have to make some decisions here. It would be more confusing.
Oh, I see what
to
you did.
apply.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so the BOD covers it all.
Basically, the
Correct.
BAOD
Correct.
covers it all.
But the
Exactly.
BAOD incurs the COID.
Correct.
Right.
This goes back to much of the public testimony that you just received on 152 Turnpike. There continues to be mass confusion, misunderstanding, misinterpretation of what town meeting voted. This accurately reflects what town meeting voted.
I know, I just sort of.
Okay. So we had a motion to direct the chairman to endorse.
Yes,
The-
direct the chairman
Not
to
in public meeting.
endorse.
No, we're not in public
No,
meeting,
that
I'm
was
sorry.
my question, if anything could be said, yes or no, so.
No, it's not, at this
The answer
point.
was just no.
Yeah.
Thank you for entertaining the question.
You're welcome, Chris.
So
Okay.
motion to direct to endorse the plan as shown.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Where's my ceremonial pen?
You think you're Trump?
You want to come by tomorrow?
Yeah, right.
I want to do them today? If you could-
Yeah, actually, I can come by tomorrow, because I'm not going to work. I have to.
Okay.
He's
take
independently
Mom to-
wealthy.
I have to, yeah, I wish. I have to take Mom to, okay. What else do we have? Well, we have a number of, if you will, resumes or applications that have been sent to us for the citizens' positions on the master plan committee. I don't believe that, certainly not most of them, I don't think any of them are actually here tonight.
No, we didn't.
We didn't.
No.
So what I would simply do is ask everybody to read them over and give some thought as to what's appropriate. There'll be a couple of familiar names on here, and some not so familiar names. And I remember it being reported to me once by somebody who had been on the 2010 Master Plan Committee that one of the most productive members of that committee was somebody that nobody had ever heard of until he showed up for the Master Plan Committee. So, it's, being famous doesn't necessarily make you the perfect person. Please read them all over.
Procedurally,
Yeah.
the board want to invite these candidates in for your
Yes,
April 10th
I believe
meeting?
we do, but not knowing what the board is going to look like. And also keeping in mind that the selectmen, a couple of them had requested that we delay a little bit on some of this because there was certainly going to be turnover on the Board of Selectmen. We know that.
But that will be known.
Yeah, that'll be known in.
Everything will be known.
Everything, yeah, everything. It will all be revealed next Tuesday night. So I think if we ask them to come in, how does the 10th look so far for agenda? Well, there'll be the reorg.
You might.
Any new hearings?
No, we will have a
We will have a reorg.
Oh, there will be, yeah. Well, if nothing else,
Yeah,
we'll
we will
we'll
have a
elect a
reorg.
new chairman.
Colleen, any new hearings?
Why is this man smiling?
I don't have any written down. So you'll have
Yeah.
review and ratification of tonight's vote?
Yes, I mean, the vote
and the
is in.
candidates.
We just have to make sure that the what you draft
Seems
is
like
what
a
we
light
said.
agenda.
Yeah, it should be a light agenda, so it might not be a bad time to invite these people to come in and say 5 minutes each. All right, why don't you take care of that?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that as you review the potential candidates, consider that an effective committee is made up of diverse experience
Yes.
and interests. That if you have too many people that are coming from the same angle, you may as well just have one.
Yeah.
You don't need a committee.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's a message we ought to consider as we're looking at these.
It takes a lot of different interests and different experience
Yeah.
to do the master plan.
Okay, we do have 2 meeting minutes. And did I get, yes, I think I looked these over. So I'm satisfied if everybody else would take a look.
I took a peek different.
Yeah, I
I
did.
would find them.
I don't have them here. Oh, I did, they're attached, never mind, I guess I do. Never mind. Excuse me.
I have a motion to accept January 30th, 2019 meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
I got a motion to approve February 13th, 2019 meeting minutes.
Second.
Aye. Okay, meeting minutes have been approved.
Another motion?
I got another motion. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you all. Not the easiest
That wasn't
meeting
quick enough.